Genty bounces outside, has a seam. Ashton Genty, he's 10, he's touchdown, Boise State.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
One-on-one down the sidelines. Caught! Flag! Touchdown! Brown doing it for the Cats!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Here is Scatterboo. On top balance. Stays on his feet. And rumbles into the end zone.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
And it's going to be a double pass. Aller loads, fires, deep. Man, there is Warren. Got it! Touchdown, Penn State.
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at UnitePrivateNetworks.com.
Tyron Lacey, the motion man. Pump fake, Nussmeier goes back, shoulder, touchdown! Tyron Lacey, and LSU wins!
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go on this Wednesday afternoon. Hope you have had a great day. We are in studio again. This is 365 Sports up until about 6 o'clock tonight. Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina. That is Craig. This is Paul. I'm David Smoak, and we appreciate your time. Our sponsors who allow us to be here every day, but you too, who support this show. Emery Winter, Garrett Ross, and Jack McKenzie are in studio too, doing all the things they do to make us look good, sound good, and also promote what we have. Good news today for Colorado. Deion Sanders, Brett McMurphy just put this up. Deion Sanders saying that, in fact, Travis Hunter, who was hurt in that Kansas State game, the shoulder injury, he walked off, did not come back, and the good news for the Buffaloes is Travis Hunter, and I think really for college football fans overall, is Travis Hunter will be able to play this week.
Yeah, that's great for him, and you know, it does often hurt people's Heisman chances. You know, he's already going to be in a race with Ashton Genty and Cam Ward and, you know, whoever else, you know, jumps into this thing. But those are the top three guys I would say right now statistically they're doing well, or at least publicly. And if you're going to miss 2 or 3 games, if you've got a shoulder injury, then that's going to slow you down. But that's huge news for Colorado to have their best player back out on the field.
Yeah, Jimmy Horn Jr. also expected back for Colorado, although Marion Miller, who hasn't been a huge impact guy for them per se, he is going to miss the rest of the year. He's already had surgery apparently, so they got dinged pretty thoroughly at wide receiver in that game last weekend. And good news is that outside of Marion Miller, I mean, they're 2 huge targets there, the two main guys, and Jimmy Horn Jr. and Travis Hunter will be available. So, yeah, that's definitely great news for Shedeur. That's great news for Deion Sanders and his entire staff and that whole program to know they're going to have their Heisman contender and also another pretty good player that's made some huge plays for you this year. So that's great for Colorado. It's great for the Big 12. I still think it's, you know, one of those things where you have your detractors, but that's a good thing. In this case, Colorado, that team that everybody loves to hate, or that team that people love but everybody else loves to hate. There's not a lot of other teams around the league like that. I actually saw, it was like Ben Koo or something from like Awful Announcing last week, had a piece on how the Big 12 has a problem. You know, it's always like, oh my God, the sky is falling. And I'm like, okay, what now is it? You know, what's the big problem now for the Big 12? And the big problem, according to him, was that outside of Colorado, the Big 12 doesn't have anybody that brings people's eyeballs, casual-wise, brings big TV ratings. And it's like, yeah, the catch to all these, though, is like, well, if Deion's not there any longer, and I know that a lot of people assume that he won't be after this year, we'll see on that, but he still is there. I understand the point being made, but it's like, why are we skipping ahead to assuming he's already not here? It's like, right now they have that team. He's there. They are bringing the TV ratings. Let's worry about that if he were to leave. But right now, yeah, that's not a problem, and it especially won't be if they have their best players available. So that's great because they should still be highly competitive and be in a lot of these games. And plus, I just want to see the best play. And Travis Hunter is certainly one of the best in the country.
You know, one thing I get this thing called the college football blitz, and I sometimes there's a nugget or two that I pull from it. In the last, I believe it has been since 2016 through last year, excluding COVID, a team that's among the top 10 for total value as far as viewerships is Oklahoma State. They've been consistent. They're not what you would call a big brand like when you think of Blue Bloods by any means, but they've done pretty well. Total ratings as far as Nielsen, there's a few teams in that list, and Oklahoma State's in the top 25, but at certain time periods, they have been very much. Now, not as powerful as what Colorado brings to the table. Good news, Travis Hunter's back. Jimmy Horn Jr. appears to be back, and they play Arizona on the road this week. Meanwhile, I hope that I'm not wrong for expressing this feeling, but when I saw late yesterday evening Josh Furlong tweet that Cam Rising was out, we knew he's pretty much out, but that he's done for the year. I hate that for Cam Rising. I hate that for Utah football. But for them to get back on track and start to win or not with Isaac Wilson, to me, this was, again, I hope he's going to be okay, but this is something where they have to just move on. And here's the statement. There you see it from Coach Whittingham. Upon further evaluation, our medical staff, his injury, Cam Rising, has unfortunately been deemed season-ending. During his time at Utah, Cam has been both a great player and leader for our program, and he will obviously be missed. Any future developments concerning his collegiate eligibility will be addressed at a later date.
Ari Temkin hit it on the head yesterday in his comparison. It was the last couple years of Tony Romo where when he got hit, he was hurt. And it was just, how bad is he going to be hurt?
Yep.
Every single time. And that's why the Cowboys, who really, did not want to move on from Tony Romo, and Tony Romo didn't want to move on, and then we're given this gift called Dak Prescott. That worked out, but they had to make that tough decision. But I think that right now we're in a situation with Utah where I think they have to make the same one. It's just every time he's out there, he gets hurt. He got hurt in the Baylor game. He finally comes back against Arizona State. What happens? He got hurt. It's probably time to move on.
As a human being, I hate for Cam Rising that his college career doesn't end on a higher note or one that was on his own terms. But that's also the risk that you run when you play as long as he has. He could have called it a career last year, could have called it a career the year prior and moved on to the next level or whatever it is he plans to do, but he kept coming back, so you raise the risk level of it not ending exactly how you wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a human being, I hate that it's going to end on his college career, at least at Utah, on a note where the last you saw him, he looked like the closest comparison to RG3 in the Redskins playoff game a few years ago, where you're going, take him out of the game. He's hurt.
Yep.
God, give him a lot of credit, but take him out of the game, Kyle Whittingham. And I think a lot of people were feeling that way. So when you see that,
that's a towel.
Yeah. When you see that, that's an awful way for somebody's career to quote unquote end. But that's the way life works sometimes. And is it the end of his college football career? He has an 8th year, as it was outlined yesterday. For me, at least, and I don't know how Utah fans feel about it. I know there's a number of them that probably agree with this based on what I've seen. But if his college career continues, it's not going to be in Salt Lake City. Unless they have another school I'm not aware of. But it will not be as a Utah Ute, and it doesn't need to be as a Utah Ute. They need to move on. He needs to move on. They've had their fill. It's been a great partnership, but it needs to turn the corner into something else at this point. And there's no way you could bring him back and go, all right, let's just hope he stays healthy. It's we've done this for 3 years now. We're not I would revolt if I was a Utah fan, and I think that they know that. I think you sense that. I think this is part of that. This is the end of Cam Rising at Utah, and it needs to be. No disrespect to him, but that's the sentiment I get from a large portion of the Utah community that you see online as well. and just some of the commentators on their side of the fence that I've seen. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. He's a really good player. As a human being, like I said, I feel for him, but as a college football fan, get out of there. I don't want any more 7-year quarterbacks, 8-year quarterbacks. Like, I get it, COVID year and all that, but see you later. I mean, good luck to you on whatever's next, but as a college football fan, I'm not a big proponent of 7- and 8-year guys. So see you down the road, and tremendous career, and I do hope the best for him, and it's a terrible way to end.
Yeah, it's his career. It's not ours. Doctors, of course, have an influence on that. Maybe family does too. But it's you don't want to end up having, like I said yesterday, a former champion in boxing or even all the other sports now walk away where he just looks like a shell of himself. I applaud the courage, what he's trying to do. Maybe one more win for the Gipper type of thing. But that was sad to watch what he was going through on Friday.
It was also a product of their own doing, because for so long they played that game of will he, won't he. We're not really shedding much light, to the point of not just the media, which can get annoyed at the slightest thing, but your own general fan base started to kind of get annoyed by the entire thing. And then the other night, he's clearly out there trying to prove people wrong and stay in the game and not be hurt again, right? And not get pulled again. And so he's out there to the detriment of himself, trying to probably prove the audience, that he is tough enough, and he doesn't need to be doing that at this stage, in my opinion. It's not going to do him any good. Look, you're tough, dude. Like, you're a really good player, but, I mean, sometimes it just is what it is, and this is college football. It's not the pros where you last as long as you can possibly last. That's not the way it's designed, so I think all the writing's on the wall, and if he plays college football next year, I would just bank on it not being in Salt Lake City, Utah for Kyle Whittingham.
It's not quite Charlie Brewer, because Charlie had a really good career at Baylor, but eventually he was just beating up damaged goods. He kept trying. Then who did he go to after Utah?
Liberty.
Liberty, yeah, and it didn't work out there either. All right, so there's that. Neil Brown, I received Bobby from Myrtle Beach, huge West Virginia fan. S. Michael DeHart sent me this note. I did not know about this until I received this, that Neil Brown in his weekly presser after the loss at home, that was a huge game against Iowa State, said to the fan base, and I mean, there are people frustrated as heck over this. I get that they want to win. Did they have a good time? It was a pretty good atmosphere. I'm assuming they had a pretty good time, and tailgating, etc. I look at the weather. It's going to be nice again. It's a nice night game. We need them to provide a home field advantage. This was from Neil Brown, West Virginia football coach, and a lot, I mean a ton of people have responded to that, saying that this was an awful statement for him to make after the loss to Iowa State.
It's a true thing that I think every coach probably wants their fans to be like the people in Ames, right? Where rain or shine,
super passive-aggressive.
Snow or
Midwest nice.
I'm just saying that whenever there's Nebraska's this way too. Whenever there's a sporting event, they go. Like, that's what the coaches want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that, and I'm giving you the benefit of that, that's what he's trying to convey. Like, please, like, it can get better, but keep going and keep the faith. I ask you to trust me, trust these guys, and do that. But the way he said it sounds a little condescending, because he's like, hey, the weather's going to be nice. Like, I don't know what you guys are mad about. We're mad because you buy tickets to the game and then bad things happen. It's not as fun when you're not winning and you lose to especially the better teams we're playing. We feel like we have no chances of fan base to get an upset. It's disheartening. And West Virginia fans are already rabid, so they don't need to be told, like, hey, I need you guys to get crazier. They're like, how much more moonshine can I drink?
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from me? So, yeah, it's probably not an untrue statement that he made about, like, hey, go out and enjoy it. But also, just don't. Like, it's not going to help you.
Well, if he had stuck to the second half of the statement rather than the first, it probably would have been okay when he says, I get they're frustrated we didn't win. We played a tough schedule. Everybody's that beat us hasn't lost, but that's no excuse. That's just the truth, and the games in our league are going to come down to the fourth quarter, and I don't think this one on Saturday is going to be any different. We need them to help us. I do get their frustration. That's not bad. We need you here to help us win close games. But that first paragraph before that, I get what they want to win. Did they have a good time? Did they enjoy it? The weather's nice. It's a night game, blah, blah, blah. Even if you say, and we need home field advantage, just people have already stopped listening because they're so turned off by the first part of what you said, where you're trying to put lipstick on a pig. And quite frankly, I just think West Virginia fans feel like you're cutting their balls off in a way. Like, where is the oomph? Where is the attitude? Where is the, most of all, winning? Where is the thing to latch onto? And instead, it's another big game loss, same thing recurring under Neil Brown. And, well, hey, at least you guys had a nice time. That's not West Virginia football. That's not any program. That's not what they want to hear when you're losing big game after big game and you're kind of just spinning your wheels in place. So they have a big one this weekend. He's right. They do need home field advantage because every game's close in this league, but he delivered the message incorrectly and should have been wiser to know that his fan base is pretty sensitive right now to all things, and especially things coming out of his mouth when he's talking about the losing part of things. So to try and, twist that to a way that makes sense, but also just the way you delivered it, I think definitely not what West Virginia fans wanted to hear, and he's receiving that backlash, as is Ren Baker and everybody else involved at this point. So I said it yesterday. I said they're pretty fed up, and I don't know if that's going to be anything that causes something to occur sooner rather than later, like this year. I don't know how much longevity he gave himself with what they did a year ago, but certainly that clock is ticking again in Morgantown.
Here's a couple of responses. I can't believe what I just heard. So he gave up on having a football team, and now it's just for entertainment purposes, kind of like the Savannah Bananas or the Morgantown Marshmallows. Or maybe we should just not go into the games at all and just tailgate, which saved me a lot of money. From Bobby in Myrtle Beach, he had the perfect opportunity to try and rally the fans into believing it, for at least generating some type of excitement for Saturday's game. It was put on a platter for him, and that's the response he gave. Yes, he asked for their support and to show up. But after the first part of his answer, which, Craig, you said, he lost a lot of fans, as you can see with a few of the tweets below. Dan Lanning, my goodness, he took advantage of a loophole that I did not know existed. I don't know how many coaches know it existed. I don't know if the NCAA understood that there was a loophole that existed. But when he did what he did at the end of the game, of that game against Ohio State, the NCAA, what he was able to do is have time run off the clock, and Ohio State can't get it back when time was of the essence. And he found a loophole, said he practiced it, and the NCAA is now going, oops, we might have to have us handle this differently in the future.
Well, they're probably going to have to put time back on the clock for that, because why wouldn't I, in a situation, put an extra player out on the field? That guy could get an interception, and then even though it's not going to count, if the play took 9 seconds, all I wanted was the 9 seconds, really, or knock a play down, because that's all he wanted was the seconds to go off the clock. And I believe it was 6 or 7 that they lost on this particular play overall from Ohio State. It's Belichick-esque. It's brilliant.
Yep.
It's absolutely brilliant. And people will keep doing it until they change the rule and put the time back on, so there's no benefit to doing it. But that's the only thing it's going to be, because if they're at the 45-yard line and they're going to be at the 50 and they've got 5 seconds instead of 9, then yeah, I'm going to do that.
There was supposed to be, I believe, 10 seconds left in the game, but after that there was just 6 seconds left, which is the one play. Although Will Howard could have handled that better too.
Yeah, he could have. That was one of the most dumbfounding ends to a game I've watched in a really long time. So I don't know how Will Howard's handled that, but it has to be a pretty tough couple of days. And as far as Lanning goes, I mean, like you said, you had 10 seconds. You put an extra man out there. That way you can rest assured you're not going to give up the big play that you definitely can't give up. And you also waste some time off the clock and you take the penalty, but those 6 seconds are still, or 4 seconds are still gone and not coming back. And that puts Ohio State in a tougher position, and we know how they did not handle that. There's lots of talk about Ryan Day and the timeout that he had in his pocket, although if you're going to drive down and kick a field goal, so there's a lot of that back and forth on how Ryan Day was at fault, but for this story in particular, like, just kudos to Dan Lanning for finding a loophole in the system, and that's what college coaches do constantly. And you think you close one up and they find another one, and this was one that, I don't know how many people had ever considered this possibility and how it could work, especially in a big game like this, but Oregon was smart enough to realize it in the moment, or at least they're claiming that they did that intentionally. If not, then that's another story. But if it was calculated, then it was brilliant. I mean, it was brilliant gamesmanship, and at the same time, probably something that needs to be addressed. Now, typically I wouldn't be on board with doing it in the middle of the season, but I can kind of understand the spirit of the game, that's something you want to shut down after the NCAA and close that loophole, because you can't. There should be a reward for being able to have a penalty and then be rewarded for that. So I think actually addressing it quickly is probably what needs to be done. I don't know what the odds are of that ever even coming into play like that again, but it did in one of the biggest wins Oregon's ever had in their program's history, and certainly one of the biggest wins in college football this year. So too little, too late to change that. But, I can see why they'd want to go and change that now.
Lanning's saying on Monday we spent an inordinate amount of time on situations, and some situations don't come up very often in college football, but this was obviously something we had worked on. You can see the result. I remember back when Bill Parcells was still coaching with the Cowboys early on, and he had the offense where they had, I forgot if it was a 1-point lead or it was a 3-point lead, and there's like 5 or 6 seconds left in the game, and on your own 40-yard line. And he had Troy Aikman take a snap, turn around, wait a second or two, and throw the ball through the back of the end zone for a safety. Game over. Clock off. You can even do that throwing a fade pattern down the sideline with 4 seconds left. You're up by 2 or whatever. Just throw the ball as far as you can, high as you can. No one can catch it. You got to be careful about intentional grounding, though. So you have to take the – and you lose. You suck time off the clock, and you don't put yourself in risk of losing a game. From Bill Connolly from ESPN, here are the updated Big 12 title hopes based on his power rankings. The S&P. Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Arizona State, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Colorado, Utah, and then TCU. Now, there's 11 through 16. They're not included. They're out. They're done. But if you actually take 4 through 16, their percentage is higher than 2 at BYU because there's a bunch of like razor cuts, 3 and 4. But Iowa State, a very nice, healthy lead on BYU, slightly ahead of Kansas State. Then everybody else is kind of, and Tech slightly ahead of everybody else, twice as much at number 4.
Here's what Neil Brown should have said. Guys, 3.7%.
Yes.
What are you bitching about?
Yeah, I know.
Come on.
Yeah,
exactly. So you're telling me there's a chance. Let's do this. No, it's like not surprising. Iowa State's been and BYU the most dominant teams.
So, yep.
Yeah, I think that's the standings basically. So, to get some percentages attached is, another way to look at it. And I think it just kind of says what we already know here is there's 2 really, really good teams, like in terms of undefeated and highly ranked and looking like they're in pretty good shape. And then there's a team in Kansas State that some feel may still be the best team when all is said and done. And then there's a team hanging around who probably will win again this weekend and be 4-0 in conference, but not everybody really believes in yet, and that's Texas Tech. And then beyond that, I don't think anybody else is really much worth the conversation this week. Now, depending on the results this week, Baylor goes and beats Tech or something, Arizona State wins again, then we'll start talking about Arizona State in a different capacity. But, this is pretty much a 4-team race at this point. And, the 2 at the top are pretty clear-cut, but Kansas State is right there nipping on their heels. And Tech, I just feel like everybody's waiting for the wheels to fall off, not go and lose 6 games in a row or anything, but just you're going to take a couple of lumps, whereas I don't know that anybody's as confident in the other 3 taking a couple of lumps. So they're still in a good spot. They're unbeaten in Big 12 play, and they should be ranked relatively soon if they keep winning. But, I think it's pretty much those 4.
All right, so there we have the latest, and again, that can change a little bit. Still a lot of games left, and a lot of games against teams that are either trying to stay alive against teams ahead of them where you could make up some ground. But it does appear as like you mentioned some of those teams are entrenched to be there for the long haul. All right, so you know about the Big Ten and SEC. They had their meeting last week. One of what they're trying to do, Matt Hayes of USA Today, and then others around the country also started to have this as well. What they're trying to do, and makes a lot of sense, and I would love it as a college football fan. I would still not like it if it eventually, neuters so many others. But they're looking at the possibility of 12 to 16 non-conference games between the Big Ten and the SEC, on top of what, for example, Texas played Michigan, 12 to 16 non-conference games to be added into the schedule. You have eventually another television revenue contract coming up around the corner. I can't imagine that any network would not want to see Ohio State, Alabama, or Michigan against LSU or
Rutgers, Mississippi State.
They wouldn't be involved. But no, I get it. But there would have to be some of them would have to play each other. But the Michigans, Ohio States, the UTs, the Georgias, the Alabamas, and others being involved in playing each other. And that's, I think, I don't think Texas was that far ahead. But when you look at who they're playing, Michigan, then Ohio State, etc. Alabama last year was non-conference. Oklahoma, Tennessee, which, of course, is a conference game, but they've played before, and they've also played others. Last year's non-conference schedule, I guess, was really, really bad. Or this year, good for them because they need all the wins. But I would love it. I sit down and watch those games. Now, how many of those games and what do the other teams do? I don't know.
But let me tell you this. And if the Big 12 and the ACC are not going to be part of this, as soon as the ACC figures out who they're going to be, then the Big 12 needs to make a partnership with them too, because you have to enhance your scheduling. You absolutely have to enhance it. If we're going to have to put up with this uproot and shifting of the world, then we better not have to sit through FCS games anymore. I know that sucks for the FCS. It's a hard reality, but I would much rather, if you're going to tell me that the thing I've loved, and I've loved kind of the way it is organizationally as far as who my team plays over and over again, is going to change, then I better get more of the good stuff than who we playing this week. Wofford, great. That's not – we're owed this by the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC, at least. The scheduling should be better, in my opinion. Now, I understand that there's to do that means that you leave some schools in the wake, but – I mean, if that's what we're being told and this is how it's going to be, then you better make most of the weeks pretty good weeks. That's all I'm saying. If it's about TV, then give me 12 good TV programs.
Yeah, there's a lot of things here. Man, I mean, first of all, I know there's some people that believe in the future of a super league and some people that don't, and I think some of that just boils down to what's your definition of it, and I think that –
Or who you like?
Or yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't think that really matters if you think it's going to happen or not. But I do think that what you consider to be the Super League might not be what it actually is. But when you look at it, it basically is a Super League. My definition is very clear. My definition is it's all the blue bloods. It's 20 teams maybe, and that's it. But I will acknowledge that if it's a Big Ten SEC only league, that might not be my definition of a Super League. But for a lot of people, that will be a Super League, right? So this might not be what it looks like in your head when you think of how they're forming a Super League. But if you look at it from a different point of view, this is how they're forming a Super League. Is now they've taken an entire week off the calendar for basically everybody in their arsenal to play within each other. And that's one less opportunity for anybody else, including the Big 12 and ACC, to play any games. So basically you're left with 2 weeks on the calendar where they're not playing anybody from their own conference or from the SEC or the Big Ten. 2 games left on the entire schedule. Now, the number of conference games needs to get figured out. Is the Big Ten going to drop one?
That's a prerequisite before they do this next. Yeah.
So is that going to get figured out, and is that going to mean the Big Ten drops one or the SEC gains one? And
no. The Big Ten has made it very clear they're not dropping a conference game.
Yeah, so the SEC –
they're not dropping below 9.
Everybody – that's been candid about it in the SEC has been, yes, 9 games is inevitable because – and they're smart enough to know that you can't pretend to be, out for world domination and then going, we're only going to play 8 games. You're like, yeah, well, okay. We're all going to play 9, so you've got to do that. So, yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I get that, but it's also mentioned in one of the articles that if you were to drop one of the conference games, if you're the Big Ten, then you could create up to like 20 different matchups with this agreement. Whereas if you both go to 9, then you get like 14 or 12. You get 12 games. So that's what I'm saying is like, y'all are probably right. That's the way it will go. But on the other hand, there is a way where you get more of those crossover matchups if the Big Ten were to drop down to where the SEC has just the 8 conference games. Either way, it's filling up the schedule. This has been teased and talked about for a long time. I don't think it's great news. I don't necessarily think it's bad news, but I don't think it's good news by any means for the ACC or for the Big 12.
No, not at all.
And you're starting to get boxed out a little bit. So, yeah, that would be somewhat concerning to me, and I'm with Paul. Like, I think you've got to go come up with your own arrangement and have Boston College playing Iowa State or whatever the situation would be. And this is where I see Sankey and them talking about, we're not doing it. What are we doing? We're not doing it. And it's like, these moves are very calculated, and they're very much boxing out the possibilities moving forward. And y'all are also the two demanding automatic spots, and now you're scheduling to where there's almost no room for anybody else. So it's almost like it's very carefully worded, the actions. And, well, I'm not technically doing that, but I'm actually really doing that. Yeah. It just doesn't, it's not that black and white. That's how it feels to me, at least. Smartest guys in the room. But, yeah, this is very interesting and kind of what's been teased for a while, so would not be surprised to see this come to fruition, and would be pretty seismic in terms of how it would affect some of those smaller schools' paydays, and also how it would position the other conferences.
And when you play yet another mega game, alpha dog, whatever you want to call it, there's also then the reason to say we want more people in the college football playoff because we're playing these huge games during the year rather than, again, a game where you pay somebody to come play in your stadium. That'll be kind of interesting to watch. And if the Big 12, you're right, Paul, if the ACC figures out their mess, whenever that might be, the first thing they need to do, now there's still going to be some matchups that aren't quite as intriguing, like what Rutgers against Mississippi State. But if the ACC settles down and they get their shit in order, then the Big 12 and the ACC need to have an alliance. It won't get as much attention, and you need to have them play a crossover game.
They should be talking about it right now.
Yeah, I know.
Like literally, they should be talking about it right now so that whenever that is, that we figure out who's going to be where, then they can just go ahead with it. Even if some of the teams wind up in the Big 12, if the ACC still exists.
Utah with Baylor.
Yeah, they've got it.
BYU and Baylor.
Because the only games that are going to be protected in that are this super rivalry games. So, for example, Georgia and Georgia Tech would be the only one that would be protected, and even then I'd be nervous about it. But I think both sides of that would be like, well, we don't want to go the way of Bedlam, But
You sure?
I don't know. Like they may say no. Now, yeah, like Florida and Florida State, I can never see a day where that doesn't happen. But even still, like
I never thought I'd see UCLA and USC in the Big Ten.
Yeah, all that.
Stanford in the ACC and SMU as a part of the ACC, or even the other changes that we have seen.
And one other thing from one of those articles and talking about the number of conference games, and y'all say, well, the Big Ten's already said that they're not going to switch on their number of conference games, but 4 schools in the SEC is from USA Today. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky have games against in-state ACC rivals they want to protect. And Southern Cal has Notre Dame, Oregon has Oregon State, and Washington has Washington State as protected non-conference rivals. Those 7 don't want a 9-game conference schedule and a non-conference game against those teams and another game that you're now playing cross ACC, SEC. So that's where I'm coming from is like, I don't think that's as much of a layup. So maybe you could get the big, but I mean that's part of the conversation.
Or maybe they just don't have the alliance schedule.
Or maybe they just have to do it and they don't get their way.
Yeah.
And they have to play that type of schedule, and that's what comes with the territory of all that big money. Is the schedule is going to be bat-esque crazy from start to finish, but you're going to be making this many millions of dollars. You're just going to have to deal with it in this new landscape. But that's something that still needs to be figured out. And I mean, I get it. It totally makes a lot of sense. And this is where it's been directing, the conversation and the meetings they've been having and all of that's been heading in this direction. So we'll see how others respond. And quite frankly, it doesn't even really matter how others respond. It's just it's every man for themselves. And you can't look at every action as like, well, now we have to react as the Big 12. It's like you just need to figure out your own path at this point because they're not worried about your path. That's very clear. They are not worried. They're not trying to schedule agreement with you. It's them two. They've separated, and they've made it clear in exact words of, I'm not worried about anybody else. Like, I'm the SEC commissioner. I don't care about anybody else but what we're doing, and it's their job to catch up to us, not the other way around. While you add the biggest brands, have the most money, have the most advantages, are demanding the most playoff spots before a game's even played, and now are wiping off an entire week on the schedule to play just each other. Yeah, you're not a part of the same party, Big 12 and ACC, and that's been very clear, but it's clearer than ever now.
The TV money will explode even higher on top of the college football playoff money that will go to maybe 16 games even after, the next couple of years. It's so interesting because we've been around. I've been here since 2010 in the Waco area. Paul before that, and Craig, and I think 13. That Baylor had a horrible, it was a really bad non-conference schedule, and one of the things they put together was because they didn't go to a bowl game for nearly 2 decades, so they started to put some layups and to get 3 wins or whatever it was. And then they finally beefed it up because they got to be pretty good for about a decade, and it's weird that BYU back-to-back years, Utah back-to-back years, and by the time they played those teams, other than 21 or 2, was it conference games. Last year, Utah was non-conference. The year before that, BYU non-conference. So I love seeing better games, but I don't want to see – I also feel, and I understand nobody may have any heart here either, and I get it. It's football. It's business. But schools like UT Chattanooga, Wofford, Tarleton State, among others, these games against some of the Power 4 schools or other schools – it like helps their survival. And so, but nobody may care about that.
Craig Sankey doesn't care about Middle Tennessee State surviving if the balls can get.
He doesn't care about NC State surviving.
And you know what? I'm not faulting him either. It's not his job to care about that. He's not the college football czar. And he's got to do what's best for his league. And look, his counterpart's doing it all without the backlash because he's not as out front as Greg Sankey is. But he's doing the exact same thing in conjunction. But I mean, I'm like, as a college football ecosystem, the way that I've always grown up with it, yeah, those buy-in games like have their place. But as somebody who wants the biggest matchups like everybody else at this point, yeah, give me the arrangement where you're going to have a SEC versus Big Ten week or whatever it's going to end up looking like, or you scatter it sporadically throughout the season. But yeah, from just a pure viewer standpoint, yeah, I would rather see that, even if it's not all great matchups, versus the Auburn Citadel game, that nobody cares about. Sorry, Citadel, but nobody cares.
And
they do.
Yeah, but
even if they get spanked.
I like the ecosystem that you use because it's like, yes, we're tearing down the rainforest, but you guys want this hand cream, right? Like there's no other way to do it. This $50 hand cream that makes your hands not look wrinkled only comes from a berry that's in the rainforest.
Tell me where that rainforest is.
Well, and for the Big 12, I mean, looking at it from this perspective, this isn't great news for you. It's also been on the wall. It's written on the wall like a year ago, if not farther back than that. But my solution to the Big 12's woes are the same that they've always been. Go win.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. I mean, you can go raise money. You can put together a nice team, but that team has to go win. So go get a couple teams in the playoff. Have one of them go on a deep run. I know the odds of that are low, but that's all you can do at this point. And to think that somehow the college football gods are going to suddenly look favorably down upon you and throw you a life raft that closes the money gap and increases your TV ratings just because you're good people, like that's not happening. And to think otherwise is foolish. So, yeah, I mean, the reality is what it is at this point, that you are maybe the lead dog in the trailing pack, But that pack out front is doing what it can to distance itself from everybody more and more by the day, and you're never going to quite catch up with them, but there is a simple way to try and gain some ground, and that's just to go win games as much as you can.
But what the ACC and Big 12 are getting with all of this, no matter the separation of revenue, they're getting more money. They're getting more money because the college football playoff money increased, and so they're getting more of that. They're just not going to get nearly enough to be in the same neighborhood.
That's also what Greg Sankey's saying when they go, hey.
That's like y'all are going to fight for 3 spots, basically.
What the hell? There's like, you're getting more money. It's like, yeah, but you get like way more of it, and you're going to get more spots. So, like, yes, we'll take the more money, but.
Yeah, because you get extra money if you actually get into the playoff and if you win a game. Yeah.
If they get their way, they're going to start out with twice as many, if not 4 times as many as you have just to start. Just to start the playoff. They're going to get 4 automatically. And you're going to be lucky to get your 1. And the other
I don't think they're going to get 4.
Well, but that's exactly what they're politicking for.
No, I get that. But you asked
so
for
they're not going to get 4.
3. Still, that's 6 of the 12.
They're not going to get 4. They're going to get 3 apiece.
Yeah.
So, half the field, and you're going to be lucky to get 1. And then there's still going to be a year where they're going to get 4. Like, there's still going to be, like, it might not be automatic, but Tennessee's got 2 losses, but they played so-and-so and so-and-so. That's coming.
Yeah, but what about the loss to Mississippi State? Yeah, but they beat LSU.
Here's all I'll compare it to. We worked at a place that took away our health insurance, and then he told us, yeah, but you'll have more in your check. And you're like, yeah, but I'm going to take and spend that money on health insurance.
We were spending, we had to pay the company like $135 a month for that or $4.
Yeah. He's like, well,
and it cost us $800.
Yeah. You'll have more in your check. No. I mean, yes, on Friday, but on Monday when I pay the bills, it doesn't matter. I'll have less.
Well, quick note or two. Both of them in
That's
a way.
It's the logic when you're like 6 whiskey and sours deep at all times.
By 4 o'clock. The Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award, Bryson Daly, the quarterback of unbeaten top 25 Army. It just does my heart good to say that about either Army or Navy for right now, and I hope it continues until they play each other. Probably not, but it's great. Bryson Daly, 136 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns on just 12 carries, 102 yards passing and a touchdown. The 5th consecutive game with 100 rushing yards. He's in the top 10 in rushing yards per game. But this week, he is the Earl Campbell Tyler Rose Award National Player of the Week. And there is a good chance we get Bryson Daly on this show before the week is up. Being in communication with Army, he had himself, and Army's having himself. What a great run. What a story it's been.
Yeah, he's from Abernathy, Texas. So that's part of the award is you're either from Texas or play in Texas. So he qualifies because he played his high school ball and was born in the state. And Evan Stewart of Oregon gave him a run for his money. I think that was obviously the bigger game, and Stewart's performance seen by a lot more people. But I also think that sometimes you got to spread the love around, and certainly Bryson Daly's been knocking on the door of that weekly honor and deserved it with his biggest performance thus far. So Evan Stewart had a nice week, and there were several others that had pretty nice weeks, but I definitely think Bryson Daly was deserving. And yeah, the Army football program is in a really nice spot right now, and he's leading the charge of that. So to see them get a little bit of love was pretty cool because that's not often the case.
One other note, speaking of Army, Jeff Monken, BYU's Kalani Sitake, Iowa State's Matt Campbell, and Miami's Mario Cristobal, Navy's Brian Newberry, who has a history of being here at Baylor, and Pitt's Pat Narduzzi. Their combined record last year as head coaches, 33 wins and 41 losses at this particular time. They're now last year. They're now 35-0. 33 and 41 last year. Those coaches combined, and they're now combined 35-0. That is flipping the switch. Good for them, all of them. And it's great to see Kalani Sitake, Matt Campbell on that list, but really Brian Newberry, Monken, Narduzzi, and Cristobal, and all the others involved. So there we are with a nugget about turning the season around. All right, when we come back, we've had a long opening segment. What do you want to do here, Paul and Craig?
We got to take a break, and then we got to do our pod.
All right, we'll do the Big 12 pod, which is the Big 12. It's the Bowlesby pod with UCF, Cincinnati, Houston, and BYU. Coming up around the corner, we will hear from Rob Mosley. He covers Oregon after their huge win, among others. Matt Brown is a part of the show. Had a request from a viewer to get him on. Had a question or two from him. Plus, we talk football with him. This is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, Robinson, Texas. My dentist is Dr. Steve Childress. It's been wonderful to have all not worrying about, golly, that hurts. What's going on here? This is bad. And I was basically just ruining myself by having too many sweets and candy and stuff like that I liked. And Dr. Childress, back in 2020 during the middle of COVID, sat down with me and said, listen, man, these are some problems. I'm going to help take care of them. I'm going to take care of you. But if you don't stop some of these habits that you have when it comes to sweets and treats, you're going to be in for one hell of a rude awakening. So, yeah, root canal here, cavity filled here, couple of teeth pulled here, a bridge put in, all of that. And now I feel very comfortable and still have work to do. But Dr. Steve Childress, if you're one of those that have not really done more than just brushing your teeth, and you know you have some problems, and you're scared of the dentist, a lot of people are. I promise you you have an incredible experience with him, and he will give you a game plan, just like teams are getting ready for this weekend with college football. Dr. Steve Childress, Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas.
The Jeep Adventure Days closeout at Allen Samuels just got bigger and better than ever with $15,000 off a 2024 Jeep Grand Cherokee Overland Demo with a V8 Hemi. Or how about a 2023 Dodge Charger RT with $15,000 off? Or a Charger Scat Pack with $11,000 off. Ask about the hot deals on the 2024 Wagoneers and get 3.9% for 72 months. Only at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Come by. Let's be friends.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
We have a super chat from Kim Coulter. We will get to that, but we're up against a time crunch with a guest coming up at just after 4. Rob Mosley covers Oregon, then Matt Brown. So we have a lot to get to, and we'll do the pod. But, Kim, thank you so much for the super chat. We will get to that at some point here on today's show. Here we go. It is the Bowlesby pod, the 4 that added after the Texas-Oklahoma announcement in the SEC. We start with BYU. What a great story that Kalani Sitake just mentioned, the turnaround. BYU, unbeaten, having a heck of a run, and Paul Catalina, a fun story with the Cougars and what they've seen. They're not flashy, but that's kind of like a lot of teams in the Big 12. Iowa State's not flashy, but they keep winning.
Yeah, they do. They keep winning and winning and winning, and it's been absolutely fantastic for BYU. They're not they're not going to beat you with a ton of huge athleticism. They don't have the studs that Colorado has, or maybe like the running backs that Kansas State has, but they're just collectively playing together really well. Jake Retzlaff has been just a huge improvement from what their quarterback play has been over the last couple of years, and he was even part of that. They didn't even know he was going to be the quarterback until essentially the last day before they had to say, here's the starter. We thought it was probably going to be Gary Bohannon. A lot of people around BYU told us probably going to be Gary Bohannon, and it's Jake Retzlaff. That's worked out fantastic for them. They're already bowl eligible. They're 6-0, and right now they got a 22% chance of being in the conference title game. They're legit. They're a tough out for anybody. I don't think they're going undefeated. I don't think many people in the country will, but I do think that they're going to wind up with 9 or 10 wins, and we're going to go, wow, what a turnaround.
And this week on Friday night, Craig, they host Oklahoma State in Provo.
Yeah, I mean, they dispatched Arizona relatively easily. I don't think Arizona played a very good game, but I think a lot of that had to do with BYU, just making life hell for Noah Fafita with that really good defense of Jay Hills, and they have now started to perhaps scrounge together more of a running game. LJ Martin coming back and healthy. Texas guy, I think, is a good sign. He had a productive day the other day, whereas they've been able to throw it around and be successful. I do think having more of a running game to lean on should be immensely beneficial if that's the direction that it's going. But Retzlaff, when he's had to throw the ball, has been really effective. Turnovers here and there, but I think he's protected the football pretty well of late, and overall has done just a really sharp, good job of handling the offense and playing complementary football, and really just the team as a whole, the knack for the big play, especially defensively, creating turnovers. It's a game changer for a football team to be able to go and rip the ball away the way that they've been able to do that. So, that Arizona game was a close game about halfway through, even though it didn't feel necessarily like you were watching an upset in progress, but it was at least close enough. You're like, well, you're going to hit a pass to McMillan here. It's 14-14, something like that. But by the end of the game, it was very clear who the better team was, and that was BYU. So they're looking sharp. They should be 7-0 after this weekend. You got Oklahoma State at night in Provo on a Friday. So that should be all BYU in terms of atmosphere, especially with where Oklahoma State's coming from right now. They're in a world of hurt, so I think the Cougars should be 7-0, should be knocking on the door of the top 10.
Cincinnati is 4-2. They're 2-1 in the conference. They're hanging around. Coach Satterfield's done a great job with them. They're at home. They play bright and early on Saturday against Arizona State. These are two of the more surprising teams. BYU's in that conversation too. But Cincinnati and Arizona State, both are grinders, play hard, surprises, and I'm happy for Scott Satterfield. And then, of course, obviously we know about Kenny Dillingham, but we're talking Cincinnati. Paul?
If you had told me Cincy and Arizona State was going to be one of the better games in the Big 12 at any point, I'd have been like, what are you talking about? Like, what kind of crystal ball do you have? How much film do you watch? Do you need to go outside maybe and do something else with your life? But yeah, it is. And Sorsby's been good. They've lost games close when they have lost. So they've lost to Pitt and Tech by a combined, I think, 5 points, something like that, 6 points. Yeah. So this is not a team that's far out from also being the shock of the conference. And good luck to them. I mean, this is what everybody says is great about the SEC, right? That somebody can come up having a great season. It's also what's great about the Big 12 is that, there's constant flow and churn of who the teams are at the top. It's not going to get boring. So this is what we wanted. This is what we're getting, and we're getting it a lot faster than I think we thought we would.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's been a really good story, as you mentioned. I don't know how good they really are. Like, that game last week, that was a big one over UCF, but it was also a very ugly game in a lot of ways. But they went down to Orlando and got a win, and they're 4-2, and they have a great argument to be 5-1. That Pitt game, they had no business losing that game, and the Texas Tech game, I mean, that could have gone either way, but they definitely had a chance to send it to overtime, and they missed a long field goal. So, yeah, they're right there in the mix, and I think you have to be encouraged by that. Definitely some things that still need to be continuously worked on and improved, but that was big to go down to O-Town and beat a former American compadre there in the Knights. And you're knocking on the door now of bowl eligibility, which I think based off of where you were sitting at this time and just at the end of last year, that's a massive step forward for you. This game right here I think is a toss-up. It's at Cincinnati. I don't know how much of an advantage that gives them other than the typical home field advantage, but this is a toss-up in my mind. I think I lean Arizona State a little bit, but to me, this really is a coin flip. So
two great running backs, right?
Yeah.
Scatterboo and then Kiner.
Yeah, two really good running backs. Kiner came back last week after getting dinged against Texas Tech and missing most of that game, and he had like 80-something yards, so not one of his better performances, but so long as he's healthy, that's a great sign. Sorsby's, really electric. They hit big plays in the passing game, so this ought to be fun. These two teams going at it, but definitely a coin flip type of a game, and whoever wins this is sitting really, really nice and right there on the verge of bowl eligibility. But I would think at this point, both teams should figure to be in the postseason.
Arizona will become bowl eligible with a win, and then Cincinnati would be a game
Arizona
away.
State.
Arizona State. Now, Houston, they were able to sit back, relax, and kind of, enjoy themselves after their win the week before, and here they are. They're playing at Kansas. And as Joseph Duarte tweeted earlier in the week, you look at the end of Houston's schedule, and there's some games that you were like, man, Kansas might be like 5-1 or whatever by then. It's still a dangerous game. Nothing's a gimme, but Houston is not a gimme. And we have said that a couple of times. Shame on us for doing that because they will fight scratch and claw with you. Houston, Paul Catalina, has been, they're not perfect by any means. They're 2-4.
Zion Chris is changes things, for their offense, although Donovan Smith came in and played well when he had to last week against TCU. So, I think that Zion Chris changes things quite a bit for them. He's really, really exciting and talented. And if they can, muddy the water like they did against teams like TCU, this may not be a team that lives in the basement. They still have a lot of work to do, but that was a huge confidence win for them, the last time they played. So let's see what happens the rest of the way. But yeah, I'm confident that they're going to be a tougher out than they were maybe earlier in the season, but still not optimistic that they're just going to turn it all around.
Well, they have a really good defense, and that's going to keep them in a lot of games like you saw with Iowa State, where by the end the scoreboard didn't look all that close, but that was a pretty close game, certainly more close for comfort than a lot of Cyclone fans would have wanted. Now, they have been an easy team to run over if you're Cincinnati, who just absolutely obliterated them a few weeks back. So they've had their very close contest, nearly beaten in Oklahoma, playing Iowa State tough, but then also getting absolutely demolished by Cincinnati. So to turn around and find yourself now at this week where you've had a chance to catch your breath and you got a historic win over TCU, their confidence is probably as high as ever. They still have some lows on offense, quarterback change or not. I mean, Zion Chris does give you something a little bit different, some different type of energy than what you got from Donovan Smith, although Donovan Smith's been admirable in his cleanup efforts or having to come in like in the other week when Chris got hurt. That was a good look for Donovan Smith. So it's good to know you got a couple of guys, even if neither one is great per se. But I think you have to feel really pleased with where you are, not necessarily record-wise, but the fact you beat TCU. That's a big win for that program in the Big 12. And I don't think you came into this year with illusions of we're going to go bowling in year one and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. So I think it's just a week by week, like what can you stack? And you stacked a pretty huge win on that win over Rice from earlier to just give you a little bit of something. And let's see how they're able to carry that with the time off to rest up and the time to really focus in on Chris as your QB1 and pair that with a couple good weapons on offense and a pretty good defense, and let's see where it takes you. But this game to me is another toss-up type of game. I do lean Kansas, But I could see Houston going there and making life hell for the Jayhawks.
All right, so Houston, after that win against TCU, which was a horrible loss for TCU because they're like, who are they right now? So we have now gone through BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and a team that is in a free fall. Gus Malzahn, the Knights of UCF, and, man, high expectations. That great running game. They are the number one ranked team when it comes to rushing yards per game. And now they go into the belly of the beast in Iowa State in Ames in a game that's a night game on FS1 coming up on Saturday night. What's going on with UCF?
Yeah, well, they're not very efficient on defense. They've made a change of quarterback. Ja'Curry Brown played last week. KJ Jefferson has not worked out. So we'll see what Ja'Curry Brown can bring them. But it's been unfortunate. Like all the good things, thought about going into UCF, especially after the TCU win, was holy cow. And then they followed that up with 3 consecutive losses and are not playing with a lot of confidence right now. So, yeah, I don't know what to think of them now any given week. It's, they're 3-3, so it's a toss-up whether, they're going to be effective or not each week. They don't seem all that much different to me than last year right now as far as prospects for going into any given game.
Big problem is KJ Jefferson stinks, and what we saw at the very beginning of the year was not a blip in him getting more comfortable like you thought it might be the week after that, and maybe him settling into a groove. It was just foreshadowing for what was to come. They can run the ball pretty effectively, but they can't do much else besides that. They're not great defensively. They're just kind of a mess, and it's not what you pictured the ideal scenario to be when you had all these running backs and this familiarity at quarterback, and this feeling of, Gus has had players like this before. This ought to be, just slide right in. That's not been the case at all. So 3 straight losses, probably going to be 4. I don't see them going up to Ames and throwing it around to get a win. I don't see them rolling up there and running the ball to get a win against a great Iowa State defense. So the heat's rising on Gus Malzahn. He's not on Dave Aranda's level. Nobody is. But I think he's right there with Neil Brown in terms of, like, the next coaches you start to look at and be like, who could be next? Who could be turning up the heat? I think Malzahn's the guy who a lot of UCF fans are kind of out on at this point. They've seen enough, and they don't like the direction it's heading. Now, I don't know how it feels like in the actual university meeting rooms that matter the most, but certainly he's got his work cut out for him. They're not performing up to expectations, and last year was a rough year. This year's turned into a rough year. There's not really signs it's going to get any better because you're not going to miraculously, the only way it can really get better is Ja'Curry Brown comes in and becomes a really good player for you. He's shown flashes of being better than Jefferson. I don't know how good he's going to be 6 weeks straight for you, but maybe he gives you a little something. But, yeah, they can run the ball really well, and they don't do a whole lot else outside of that all that well. Don't defend the pass. It's just they don't throw. It's kind of a mess, like I said. And so I don't know what direction they're taking, but I don't think it's going to turn for the better this weekend. And you know who they play after going to Ames? They play BYU. So they've got a situation here where they're looking at maybe 4 or 5 straight losses, potentially, or a couple of big wins and turn this whole attitude around surrounding Malzahn. But they have their work cut out for them.
All right, Paul, you've made your comments. BYU, the best of all the pods. When you put them together, we need to start this next week or look at it tomorrow. Who has the best pod? When you have Iowa State, K-State in one, West Virginia's 500, and then KU's a huge disappointment. You have Texas Tech in the South pod, but Oklahoma State, TCU, and Baylor are not good.
Well, it's not that one.
In the four corners, you have Utah, who's been a disappointment, regardless of what happens with their attrition and injuries. Colorado's been okay. Arizona,
I think you've got a split between the Bowlesby pod and the North because Bowlesby has BYU and Cincinnati in it, and the North has Iowa State and Kansas State in it.
And Iowa State and Kansas State, if you look at the records, they're right there 1-4 or 2-4 based on the records. BYU, Iowa State, Texas Tech all lead the way at 3-0. Tomorrow, we will look at the Four Corners pod on this show as we do each day, picking out a foursome of the 16 in the Big 12. Coming up next, Rob Mosley, covers Oregon. Around the corner, Matt Brown from Extra Points. Much more. Craig's Off the Radar, Paul's Top 5, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist. And yes, we will get to at some point, and I'm not sure if Craig's going to handle it or we will all together, on the Jerry Jones rant today on radio in Dallas, Texas. It was like an old man acting like a fool. This is, like I would know that. This is 365 Sports. The Baylor Alumni Network, fan engagement is what they call it. Baylor on the road in Lubbock. If you have a watch party that you would like for them or to help promote, whether you're in Salt Lake City, we have a huge contingent, or Phoenix, Scottsdale, Tucson, big chunk. Orlando, a big chunk. Oklahoma City, big chunk of people who watch this show. Doesn't mean you're a Baylor fan, but if you are in those markets and you want to have a watch party and you want to do it with Baylor fans and alums, you can contact Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe. They will help you publicize your event wherever it might be, and they even do this throughout and into basketball season too. If they're on the road, they usually have something at the team hotel or somewhere else. So if you have something or you want to be more involved, it's the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement. Doug Furch and Paul Thorpe, the Baylor Alumni Fan Engagement.
Score big savings at the Kick Off the Savings event at Richard Carr Buick. A 2024 Car and Driver Magazine Editor's Choice, the all-new Buick Envista starts at only $23,990. Or make the winning drive in a 2024 Buick Encore GX SUV and save $4,000 for non-GM car owners. Or save $1,000 on 2024 Buick Envisions in stock. Qualified buyers get 0.9% financing and no payments for 90 days. Score your deal at the Kick Off the Savings event going on now at Richard Carr Buick.
At Richard Carr, we give you more.
Edward Jones financial advisors Josh Satterfield and John Maddox understand these are difficult and changing times we live in, but they know how important your financial investments are to you. So is your financial advisor staying in touch with you and helping you navigate today's financial climate? When you invest with Edward Jones financial advisors Josh Satterfield, John Maddox, and Sean Carter, they will provide their time and experience to help you reach your goals. And like coaching athletes, investing money is about time, patience, and encouragement. Josh Satterfield and Sean Carter on Wycon Road off Bagby, and John Maddox on Sapphire Boulevard in Hewitt. Proud sponsors of Midway Panthers football. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Membership SIPC.
El Conquistador Restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow @GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McClain County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. This segment is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. It's only worth it if you enjoy it. Containing only 95 calories and 2.6 carbs.
Rob Mosley covers Oregon. Go Ducks, and he joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul, David Smoak. And Rob, what a win. What a great finish. Dynamic to the end. We mentioned the Dan Lanning saying that they worked on that 12 men on the field. When you saw that and then you knew time was off and they didn't put it back, what was that like on your end? And then he says that they've worked on that. That's a Bill Belichick-like move.
Well, I was freaking out at the time because I was in the end zone yelling, "We got 12, we got 12, call timeout, call timeout." And fortunately, much smarter people than I were on the Oregon sideline at the time because they clearly had a plan in place, it sounds like. So it seemed to me last night Coach Lanning left a little bit of the door open for some ambiguity on that, how you interpret his answer there. But regardless, it worked out really well, obviously, for the Ducks. And for a game that was so highly anticipated, for it to kind of meet the moment the way the game did, it was pretty special all the way around.
Rob, did that feel like a Big Ten football game?
I don't really know. I mean, I've only experienced a couple at this point, and one was against UCLA. So that felt like a game from right out of the recent past. But it felt like a slobber knocker, that's for sure. It was, that Ohio State was supposed to play here in 2020. That game got canceled because of the pandemic. So for the fans around here, really, it wasn't just, since conference realignment or schedules were announced for this season. Since 2020, our fans have been clamoring for Ohio State to make the trip out here and then to see Oregon test themselves against that program. And so again, I mean, for a game that to be that highly anticipated and meet the moment was pretty awesome.
Rob, Dylan Gabriel has always been it. It's like go back to UCF, Texas against Oklahoma when he had the big game, the big moment against Texas. He's always his best in big moments. He is diminutive as quarterbacks go. What has the Dylan Gabriel experience been like for Ducks fans?
Yeah, I think obviously there's, he's had a couple moments he'd like to have back, a couple turnovers in the red area a couple weeks back. But I think overall, you just look at the productivity. You look at the job this offense did with Will Stein coming in last year and working with Bo Nix and just how efficient and explosive they were. And you kind of hoped that, things could be the same with Dylan Gabriel in place. And I think the whole team took a bit of time the first couple weeks of the season to kind of find its groove a little bit and tweak some things here and there, line up schematically, all that. But I think, the last few weeks since the comfort level has really started to really seem apparent between him and his offensive line, the skill guys. You just see him executing for the most part at a really high level with a couple of plays being the exception. But he's just, he's got that kind of Hawaiian Islands, like cool, calm demeanor where, kind of whatever's going on, it's all good. He can kind of roll with it. And, we see it like in post-game interviews. He's just so comfortable, in a room full of people, some of them 2 or 3 times his age, just really, taking command of a podium at a press conference, taking command of an offense on the field, and really thriving in the spotlight. So it's been fun to watch so far.
Evan Stewart had a really nice game on Saturday, his best game as a Duck at this point. They've obviously got a very talented wide receiver core that he's a part of, starting with, Tez Johnson and others. But, your perspective on Evan Stewart, his contributions, and just kind of how he fits into the big picture.
Yeah, just obviously, was his reputation was being a really explosive athlete, create separation and get down the field. And I think the first few weeks of the season, for Oregon, the focus was, seemed to be kind of shorter, more intermediate stuff. And, Tez Johnson's really, really effective in that. And I think he's like 4th in the nation in catches right now. So he's obviously been getting the job done. And there's a talented tight end group as well that the Ducks like to work to as well. So, there's just kind of, you can be the victim of the fact there's only one football sometimes, but then you go into a matchup like last week where clearly the Ducks thought they could have some success with deep shots. And, Evan Stewart being a guy who can thrive in that situation, he showed that and just made some really big plays down the field that really sparked this team offensively.
Was that the first time that Evan Stewart has, in a way, kind of gone off?
Oh, yeah, since he got here, yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, I think, you were starting to see some fans wonder, why wasn't he getting the ball? Was something going on? And again, I just think, you can be the victim sometimes of the fact there's only one ball to go around. And, based on the way Oregon has recruited the last, decade, and particularly the last few years, there's some really, really talented guys in some other spots that you can get the ball to as well. So, but again, this matchup seemed to suit what he does particularly well, and they sure took advantage of it.
With that win, and that Ohio State is now out of the way for now, they could very well see them again in the Big Ten championship game if everything continues on the path. Is there, at least from the fan base, a little bit of a sigh of relief that one's off the board and now they move through with what is not? I mean, Illinois is still on the schedule at Michigan, even though, we're not really even sure what they're going to be by November 2nd, are still out there for them.
Remind me again. So what are you asking?
Is there okay, that part's done. They got the big win. Now they can, now it's maybe a little bit easier because the first part of the schedule way tougher than the last one with, Boise State and Oregon State both on it.
Yeah, no, I think, particularly again with the way the season started, with the performances against Idaho and then a Boise State team that, I think is looking like a really good team with obviously a really, really good running back. There were some questions, I think, amongst the fan base the first few weeks of the year, kind of who was this Oregon team and did it have as high of a ceiling as we thought preseason? And so I think, when you go up against a program like Ohio State and come out on top like that, then that really validates that sense that, okay, yes, this really is a team that could be in the running in a couple months, to be maybe among the best, maybe the best team in the country. Certainly in that conversation. So really kind of validated, I think, some preseason expectation, hopes, optimism, whatever you want to call it. And obviously still a sense that there's a long, long way to go. But, knowing that you took down, albeit at home, another team considered a favorite in this conference, it's hugely validating. I think, nobody's breathing like a sigh of relief. To your question earlier about does that feel like a Big Ten game? And, genuinely, I'm not 100% sure. I haven't experienced many of them. I think for the Oregon fan base, haven't experienced a lot of what's to come too. So there's so much of a sense of kind of unknown about, the tricks that are coming up, some of the environments you got to play in. Oregon's played at Wisconsin, but it was, 20 something years ago. It was played at Michigan, but it was 15 years ago, whatever like that. So, there's kind of some unknowns, some uncertainty out there. But now that this is a program that can potentially reach as high of a ceiling as we thought it could if it plays well.
Be honest, when they played Oregon State and UCLA, you slipped and said it was a Pac-12 conference game.
Okay, knock on wood, I don't think I've said that yet. But now that you plant the seed, I'm sure I will, in the next 2 days. Old habits certainly die hard. So I've been sort of monitoring myself to see if I can keep up that winning streak. But yeah, it's obviously it's a year of transition, and we're all kind of learning and adjusting and getting used to this, and it is a big difference. But again, I think you look at things that validate the move. I think when you look at 10 million something people watching that game the other day. That's why you want to play in a league like the Big Ten. Oregon's next two games this week at Purdue and next week at Illinois are both on over-the-air broadcast networks. That's going to be 6 straight nationally televised over-the-air, whether it's CBS, NBC, Fox games. And that's never happened, we don't think, in school history. 6 straight weeks of being on an over-the-air kind of Big Four TV network. And so it just kind of shows you kind of the exposure that you can get. Oregon's obviously had a spotlight on it in recent years and earned that, but to have it this consistently on this big of a stage, I think kind of validates the move in some ways.
They still have on their schedule a couple of top 25 teams, at least for now. They're at the end of it with Illinois, Michigan, the Washington game. The Huskies have been down, but that win against Boise State when they came back, down a touchdown to win that game. And the way the Broncos continue to play, that's got to be something that's a data point or something, because they won that game if Boise State continues to run the table.
Yeah, I think if you're Oregon, you could probably try to make the case that you have the best pair of wins. Whether anybody wants to say, beating Ohio State is the best single win by any individual team. Beating Ohio State and Boise State, again, albeit at home, where you do have a heck of an advantage. I think that anybody who didn't know that before last week now knows how much of an advantage Austin Stadium is. And so having both those games at home no doubt helps. But, I think, Oregon could credibly make at least an argument that that's the best pair of wins by any team in the country. So, certainly as you're starting to parse through data points, and when you start to think about like playoff seeding, and if everything goes right and you're in that conversation still in a few weeks, that can only help.
Rob, thank you. Appreciate it. What a win for Oregon against Ohio State, unbeaten and number 2 in the country. A dramatic win, 32-31. Rob Mosley, GoDucks.com. When we come back, Matt Brown, Extra Points. This is 365 Sports. I dropped by Don Chubador and Coffee Beans over the weekend, played a round of golf on Saturday, went by there to get a bottle of Vita Dreams. That is the CBD product that I take a gummy at night to just kind of calm everything down a little bit. I don't feel like I don't feel different, but it just, when I do go to sleep, I go to sleep. And it's something that if you are struggling, tossing and turning, whatever it might be, too much on your mind, or you just are wired, that wouldn't be a bad option. You can talk to both Cheyenne and also Joshua about that. And I was speaking to Joshua because retired stockbroker, his birthday was last week. He's a viewer of this show, had contacted them and wanted to order something online, and they're working on their website to even make it easier to do that, but he was able to get something delivered to him, and that's cool too. They will do that if you have cigars or something that you want sent to you. Fresh coffee beans. I mentioned the CBD product, Vita Dreams. And then, of course, a 48-foot walk-in humidor with Macanudo and Davidoff and much more. Rocky Patel, my favorite brand. Arturo Fuente, Romeo Julieta, Padron, Cohiba, yes, all of that. Joshua and Cheyenne and the wall of Texas brand cigars that is a very popular item and has been since they launched it about a month or two ago. Don Chubador and Coffee Beans in the Townwood Shopping Center between Richland Drive and Valley Mills in Waco.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma, and they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Pioneer Steel and Pipe opened their doors in 1943, and they have never wavered with their focus on great product and customer service, relationships with a handshake, making sure you, the customer, is satisfied. Their new facility is now twice the size, allowing new inventory, higher quantities, and in a much more organized fashion. In addition to the long lengths in tubing, angles, channels, rods, and flat, Pioneer Steel and Pipe now offers several shorter, more convenient lengths of material already cut. Their 2,500 square foot showroom has over 1,000 new products in stock, new welding supplies, hardware, quickcrete, and do-it-yourself components for any project, whether you are a professional contractor or weekend warrior. The new facility is designed to make your loading experience faster and more efficient with easy drive lanes around the building and much more room to get your trailer loaded. Our location may have changed, but our values haven't, and our relationship with customers goes much farther than just business. Pioneer Steel and Pipe on Loop 340 and Highway 6 and just east of I-35 in Waco.
Some say a dog is a man's best friend. But I tell you what, boys, you better think again. 'Cause there ain't nothing better than some cows, pigs, and turkeys too. I love to cover them in sauce down at Rudy's Barbecue.
Bring all your friends to Rudy's for some tasty oak smoke barbecue.
Next in line.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
All right, here we go. This 4 o'clock hour. There's the dude, the Provo, Utah traveler in Matt Brown. Extra Points joins us on 365 Sports. How was it?
Listen, it was great. It's always a little bit of an emotional experience for me to spend a lot of time out there, especially given the subject matter I was reporting on. But as I'm sure many of you guys here know, that's a fan base that's very friendly, very warm. I probably gained 8 or 9 pounds, I think, the week I was there, just because of the deluge of desserts that are constantly thrown at you. Although I will say, barbecue in your neck of the woods, unfortunately, much better than what you're going to find in Utah County.
Yeah. Well, you didn't. I'm glad you told the people that, Matt. But just so they don't set unreasonable expectations, you went out to find beer drinkers at BYU, which is a needle in a haystack, I'm sure, a little bit. But what was that experience like?
If we had talked a year and a half ago, that would have been my exact reaction too. Like, of course, everybody in this fan base is a Peter Priesthood super Mormon who, of course, they wouldn't be drinking. They're all these people that I've known all my life. But I was actually people within BYU's athletic department that kind of tipped me off about this maybe 9 months ago. Like, we read your Twitter, we know the jokes. Some of them are funny, some of them definitely not funny. But this fan base is maybe a little bit more complicated than maybe you're giving it credit for. Maybe you should come out and start talking to people. And I'm glad that I did. I had a lot of folks reach out to me. We talked over the phone. We met up in and around the stadium before the game, who either used to be LDS and have since left that faith, or maybe were never Latter-day Saints to begin with. A lot of people that moved in and around Utah for work or for other reasons. Just like you might not necessarily have to be a Baptist to be a Baylor Bears fan. You might grow up near the area or have a connection to a player or a coach and then just jump into that culture either way. And I think one of the big takeaways that I had is that us humans, we're complicated. A lot of us we contain multitudes. We carry lots of different, maybe contradictory identities throughout ourselves, right? Whether it's we believe one thing, but sometimes we have to purchase X, Y, or Z, or we're this, but we're also a member of this other group that's very different. So you have a lot of people that are like, listen, I might feel some kind of way religiously, or maybe I don't see eye to eye with this sponsoring institution, but on Saturdays I can set all of that aside. And I just want to scream and eat 4-foot-long donuts with 60,000 of my new friends here. And if that means that I'm going to enjoy a couple of adult beverages, I'm just going to do it off to the side so nobody sees, and we're going to be okay. And I think there are probably people that are listening to this that might have a similar relationship with Baylor or TCU or SMU or some other places. And I think that's It's important to see because we don't always do this well, but when we do, I think college athletics can be a rare institution that legitimately does unite people. And you can set aside political differences or racial differences or religious differences or other things and just focus on what's important at that exact moment, which is that the University of Arizona sucks. And that we're all here to sing and to eat and to root for their demise, and then we'll move on to something else. And if we do that correctly, I think that that can be a really beautiful and important thing in America.
Speaking of the foot-long donuts, or actually more than a foot-long, cougar tails, did you have one while you were out there?
Oh, I had the cougar tail. I went to the BYU Creamery and got the fancy ice cream and like the world-famous chocolate milk that has like chocolate chips in it. I mean, when people found out that I wasn't from there, you know, they're throwing brownies down my throat. You can go to all the soda shops where you can get a Mountain Dew with like 7 other different kind of pumps in it. So it's delicious, but it has 2,000 calories. Like the whole works. We all have to dull the pain of being alive somehow. Most of us in this country do that with the occasional adult beverage. Most folks in Utah do not. So they decide to do it with sugar. And it's delicious. I thoroughly enjoyed all of it.
Well, that's awesome, man. So that all sounds like a lot of fun, but the product on the field is also a lot of fun right now. Just kind of what did you gather about the spirit of BYU football at the moment with this 6-0 start and everything just looking like it's going in a really good direction right now?
It's so surprising, isn't it? I don't know what you guys thought about this team, but I think most people that followed the Big 12 figured that they were going to be near the bottom. I think the Vegas over-under on this team was 4.5, and I probably would have taken the under. It didn't really add a bunch of huge additions from the transfer portal. They don't recruit at a particularly elite level. Their offense was garbage last year, and a lot of those guys are coming back. And what we're seeing is something you don't see a whole lot in college football, which is just a bunch of guys who stuck around and got better. They have one of the best offenses in this league, and I was really impressed from watching them there. I think about how this coaching staff found ways to scheme people open, to take advantage of the 2 or 3 things that the offense does really well, and then just keep doing them. And then if you're able to keep doing those things and you limit explosive plays, eventually the other team's going to screw up. And you don't necessarily have to be the greatest show on turf to win a lot of games in this league. The ironic thing is that that's kind of how Utah has won over the last several years, with really mean defensive lines and chunk plays and havoc plays on defense and waiting for you to shoot yourself in the foot like a great big Polynesian Iowa. That it wasn't always super fun to watch, but it always wins 9, 10 plus games. And now you're seeing this year, I think BYU is out Utahing Utah, despite Utah having on paper better players, more returning experience, higher expectations. They're not the only team in this league that is playing very differently than how I think you and I would have expected back when we were talking in August. But they're one of the most interesting ones.
Matt, this was one of the craziest weekends and maybe best wall-to-wall weekends of college football ever. Ohio State and Oregon, and even Florida and Tennessee, which probably shouldn't have been a close game. I mean, Alabama, South Carolina, Penn State, USC, all these came down to the wire. Is this what we are to expect should the SEC and Big Ten continue their path towards world domination?
It's a good question. And I mean, I still feel like our sample size for this season is small enough that I'm hesitant to draw really sweeping conclusions other than, hey, this year, I think there's maybe 2 or 3 really, really, really good teams. And then maybe teams 4 and teams 16 really aren't that different, which does make for compelling Saturday games. I think it should make the playoff really exciting. I don't know if we're going to see a lot more weeks like this one. Travel does tend to be a great equalizer. Because it turns out that flying 3.5 hours and changing 3 time zones is a huge pain in the butt, and it tends to make you a little bit worse at sports. So I'm not going to at all be surprised in the leagues where we have cross-country travel in the Big Ten and the ACC, even some more in this league, or if you see some upsets or some teams like really fail to cover big spreads. I've seen the reports over the last 2 days about the Big Ten and the SEC getting together in Nashville and thinking about maybe cementing some kind of permanent scheduling alliance or stepping even more towards taking over the world. And I sent some texts today, and I don't think any of that makes mathematical sense. I'm not saying anybody made it up. I think that whatever television industry sources were saying that codifying 12 games a year overwhelmingly changes the television numbers compared to all the other costs that go with it. I don't see how that maths. And I'll probably try to write about that a little bit more this week.
Matt, BYU is not in the top 10, but they've moved from unranked to 13. Iowa State, I think, is 9. Both of them are undefeated. Both of them have some nice wins. Should both of them, in your opinion, be inside the top 10?
I guess you have to sit there and think. I'm going to try to pull up the AP top 10 here while we're talking about who you move out. It's kind of unfair for BYU, I guess, that inertia is such a powerful force. And it takes a couple of weeks for people to realize, like, oh, I guess this isn't like a bottom 60 team like we thought. And the SMU that we saw in that BYU game is a very different team compared to now. Like that, I think if BYU played SMU now, I would probably take the Ponies. I think Iowa State is perfectly fine in the top 10. I guess the only team that's in there that maybe you could talk me out of that they shouldn't be would be LSU. If you get in the advanced stats, maybe there's not a huge difference between BYU and Clemson, but I feel like the gap between Alabama at 7 and BYU, honestly A&M at 14, I think it's so small that you could configure those just about any way that you wanted, and I wouldn't fight you on it.
Matt Brown, Extra Points, with us on 365 Sports.
Matt, what did you think? You're an Ohio State guy. That Oregon game, what were your thoughts, your emotions, where you went to after Will Howard made that really bad play?
Well, at that point, I think I poured myself a beverage and just kind of sighed there for a second, right? There's what I think emotionally, and then there's what I think rationally as an alleged serious professional in the college football space. The emotional reaction is we got to send Ryan Day to Siberia. This dude's 2-6 against top 5 teams. There's almost no major wins against anybody that's of equal talent. He's a bearded John Cooper. I'm sick of looking at him. Get him out of here. Which is not unlike a lot of other people in the 614 area code with Twitter accounts. When you look at it rationally, you go, okay, of course that's stupid. This is one of the most successful coaches, not just in Ohio State history, but of nearly anybody else. This team, in many ways not in many ways, they definitely should have won that game. And Oregon is one of the 2 best teams in the country. You played them at their place and had them, snap for snap until some late game execution questions. So I think the big thing for Ohio State is, do you chalk this up as just one of those games, which happens to nearly everybody. And you look at this and think, hey, Ohio State's passing attack actually looks really good. Surely Denzel Burke won't get barbecued like that on every play again. He's has been a very consistent cornerback for Ohio State, and they got the rest of the season ahead of them. They're going to be fine. Or you look at it and say, that's true, but you've had just one of those games now 5 or 6 different times. At what point does it become a habit? Right now, all you have is that everybody in Ohio is very angry, which is not that much different from the baseline emotion from when I remember of Columbus. Like that's usually an 8 out of 10 on the anger scale. Now we're about a 9.5. By God, they better beat Penn State. If they go into that Michigan game with 2 losses and absolutely needing to get that one to back into like the 9 or the 10 seed, someone's going to perform a citizen's arrest on this coaching staff and make them go take a Chargers job.
Yeah, that no question about it. I had a question from somebody who DM'd me on Twitter, Sean Fulton. Smokey, hope all is well. Any chance you guys are having Matt on anytime soon? I DM'd him a question about EA College Football 25. Was curious about potential plans to add the masked rider into the game. My grandfather was the first masked rider, so personally, it would be incredible.
It would be incredible. The masked rider looks pretty great, right? My understanding, and I haven't asked anybody about this in Orlando in a couple of weeks. As you guys might imagine, they're a little bit busy right now, or we're a little bit busy with some other things on the hurricane front. But my understanding was that there weren't plans to add mascots into the game this release cycle that weren't part of the game at launch. And part of that is because the animation cycle and work to bring in mascots, given the kind of rebuilt engine that EA is using, it's pretty complicated. They were using live actors for everything, and then they would physically build sets to replicate some of the mascot props, or they would use live actors to emulate horses or other animals, which means that the animations that you see are pretty high quality, but it was harder to scale in the beginning of release, given that they also had to do the same thing for all of the new stadiums and all of the new player models. As I understand from talking to devs when I was in Florida, is for the next release of the game, you don't have to make a gajillion new stadiums. You might have to add one. You don't need to add a gajillion new player models. You're going to add a couple. So you're going to have more time to either flesh out the stadiums that you maybe cut some corners on before, or add in new mascots. I would not expect any new mascot this cycle. For next year's game, do I think it is probable that there'll be way more Power 4 mascots or way more FBS mascots than before? Yes.
Yeah, you'll have to change the Northwestern Stadium, right? Is that one you might have to redo?
That is, and I remember talking to people about that. So like the if you played the game, it's the old Ryan Field that's in there now, and that's because in 2022, when a lot of these things are being finalized, the on-campus stadium was barely a hypothetical idea. It wasn't something that the university was moving forward to. By the time that they knew this is what we're going to be doing, it was too late. I mean, they were putting the finishing touches on the stadium like as the game was being released. But given the overwhelmingly positive feedback from fans and media, I think there's a pretty good chance that that's going to be in the game for next year. Hawaii would be the other one whose stadium was not built. They used a default, a similar kind of temporary situation where the university officials have told me that for the next game, they very much want the Ching Athletic Complex in the game.
Where are you going next?
Going next. Funny you mentioned that. In 2 weeks, I'm going to Hawaii. Which is not just because I would like to drink something pink and tropical on the beach, although I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring my wife, but it is actually a work trip. I'm going to be doing a couple of stories on the Hawaii Athletic Department in the midst of their conference realignment change, their structural goals for the university, and then I want to fly with the football team to Fresno. Because as we're talking now about the difficulties of cross-country travel, these guys have been doing it longer than anybody else in FBS, and I want to write about the human cost and toll and scale and kind of scale of bringing that large of a traveling party over the islands here to Central California. So I'll be doing that. Should have a couple of stories in that department, and then we just have the Extra Points Bowl. If you want to go visit beautiful Canton, Ohio in late November, which you're hearing more and more people talk about as a tourist destination, you'll be able to see our bowl game, Division III, at the Hall of Fame Stadium on November 23rd.
I think that's just so awesome that you guys are doing that. And that way you experience what it's like to run a bowl, all the things, and then you have another great article, obviously, to discuss.
Matt, get some Loco Moco while you're in Hawaii.
I will. I'm going to get the shaved ice. I'm going to try some Spam. I had Spam, but I'm going to try good Spam.
Dole Whip. Dole Whip, very good.
Yeah. No, and the last thing I'll mention here on the bowl front, it's been very educational to be a part of the process of trying to find sponsors, of trying to answer all of these operational questions and things that maybe we take for granted. One of the things that we are pretty close, I'm hoping to be able to pull off correctly here, we've had multiple conversations, is getting some flyovers. There's multiple Air Force bases near here. The Goodyear blimp is stationed within 30 minutes from the stadium. I don't think there's any reason why we can't have the kind of stuff that you see at a Cowboys game or a major college football postseason event at a Baldwin-Wallace playoff game or a bowl game. That's what we're going to be trying to do, and it's been fun to learn about what goes into making all that stuff happen.
That's awesome, Matt. Thank you. Appreciate the access. Matt Brown, Extra Points with us. Appreciate the time, and also Sean Fulton. Appreciate the question. A DM to me on Twitter at David Smoak. Kim Coulter, Super Chat, $9.99. With Craig's point being very fair, which programs do we now discuss putting on the chopping block that has to be said out in public? Advocating for that point means the death of many. And I think what he's talking about is that as everyone at the top gets bigger, richer, stronger, whatever, bigger, better, faster, stronger, richer, are there going to be just some that can't keep up? And we've discussed this before, but yeah, there's going to be some athletic departments that have to make some decisions.
Yeah, I think that there will be. I don't know on any type of a timeline. I think so much is getting sorted out with the House settlements. Everybody's kind of still trying to find where they sit amongst all of these various changes ongoing, and it still remains to be seen of just what kind of an alliance, even though they're making particularly sure to not call it that, but this arrangement between the SEC and the Big Ten, just what kind of a direction does that take? It'll be an interesting next couple years to just kind of see how the table is set for the next round of TV contracts, which are pretty far off. Like, that doesn't need speculation at the moment, really, but it's also a world we live in where things get here very quickly. It's 5 years away, and all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's here, and you're like, oh. So, yeah, I mean, these next 2-3 years, I think, are going to lay the table for whatever it all looks like on the other side. And I know that there's the sentiments of, Well, eventually Ohio State and Michigan, and they're not going to want to keep playing Purdue. And you might be right. But maybe they do, because somebody's got to be Purdue. Mm-hmm. And somebody's got to take the losses and be the jobber of the group. And, also has still that historical tie-in and everything else that matters to be in the Big Ten or to be in the SEC. You're not just going to crumple that up like a piece of paper and toss it. So maybe they still do have their place. And I know that's a very unfair world for the Oklahoma States and the Utahs and anybody in the Big 12 really that you want to mention that, well, we take our football way more seriously than a lot of these other schools do, but unfortunately, some of those schools that are the bottom dwellers, even a Vanderbilt who is not so much that now, but they still have that historical tie-in, so they might be okay. But if there ever does come a world where the TV executives decide we want Ohio State, Oregon like every week or some version of that, and at worst it's like Ohio State, Arkansas, then maybe that's where you would see something. But I think they're going to do everything they can to protect what they already have as much as possible. And that's why it's not going to be necessarily, a true Super League as far as my definition of it goes. Because if it was up to me, I'd be culling teams. I'd be like, see ya, Vandy. Yep. See ya, Purdue. See ya, who else would – I don't even want to keep bashing on teams, but it would get whittled down. Both conferences would get cut like in half. But I don't think where that's going to end up, because you still need the jobbers. You still need the TV spots, and you still have all that history that you're not necessarily just going to cut and do away with, know?
No,
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you, Kim, for the super chat. Also, retired stockbroker. My wife muzzled me and cut off my chat room account.
Oh, come on now.
No, she did not. I thought I saw you in the chat room. Les would never do that to you. Metal. Retired stockbroker, yeah, when I'm home, my wife gets driven crazy with 365. She hates sports, too. Well, that's unfortunate. We're not going to tell you who you should be hanging around, but appreciate that. Retired stockbroker, no, quit letting 365 Sports chat room brothers, sisters block each other. Oh, I get what you're saying. I've always just said if you don't like somebody and what they say and get annoyed with them, block them, like Kim did me today. I get it. All right, when we come back, we'll have Craig Smoak off the radar. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Go online, marcos.com, and find all sorts of specials from what they have with a variety of different ingredients on your pie, your pizza. You want thin crust? I do. You can get thick crust. You get that too. Of course, they have wings and sandwiches and more. Soft drinks if you need that too. Bob Mock has 5 stores in the Waco location area with Hewitt, Woodway, Robinson, China Spring, and Belle Meade. Marco's Pizza, the fastest growing pizza brand in America, for all of the various specials right now, and they're constantly changing. Go to marcos.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
Welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports, Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45, and got a grab bag of goodies to discuss here in the segment, so let's get right to it, and let's start off with what I feel like will probably need to go first because I don't know how long it will take you guys to talk through this, but Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys making some waves today. The Cowboys are struggling mightily, but, you know, it is not anything new necessarily. Like I've followed them for 30 years. I've seen them ebb and flow. My earliest memories of them being the greatest team of all time, basically, in my eyes at least, as a young kid, watching them win Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl. And then the majority of my life since that has been them being any level of mediocre to pretty good to downright awful. But one thing has remained the same this entire time, and that is Jerry Jones. All the head coaches, all the quarterbacks, all the missed opportunities or big wins. Jerry's always been there, and you know what else hasn't changed? This media obsession with Jerry Jones, and likewise his obsession with the media. I saw a lot of talk last night on Twitter, and I think I saw maybe Chuck Cooperstein a couple days ago had the best tweet about how this is as much the Dallas media's fault as it is Jerry Jones's fault. The way that they just come running for him to speak into a microphone and just sit there at his feet, even if they're asking tough questions, it's unlike any other relationship that you see, not just in the NFL, but like in pro sports, you know, as far as an owner being that out there. But he took a new chapter or wrote a new chapter in just the crazy media back and forth, certainly today while he was on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas. He does a weekly radio appearance on that station, which is the home of the Cowboys. And you know, these guys feel like, and we know the host, they feel like they've got to basically be the voice of the fans and ask the tough questions and like, why is this not working? You know, blah, blah, blah. So he's sitting there talking to Sean Sharif and RJ Choppy. And I don't know how to actually like break down the segment, but there are a couple of quotes from the ESPN write-up on this, and this was one of them. So I guess he was asked about what he's going to do about it.
Right.
Listen, let me tell you what I'll do about it. I will let us sit down and look at the decisions we've made over the last several years. I'll look at it. Now, if you think I'm interested on a damn phone call with you over the radio and sitting here and throwing all the good out with the dishwater, you'd have to go to be smoking something over there this morning. I'm not, and I really don't, and I don't even want our listeners listening to me to talk about this is not your job. Your job isn't to let me go over the reasons that I did something, and I'm sorry that I did it. That's not your job. That's not your job, or I'll get somebody else to ask these questions, man. No, I'm not kidding. So that was in response to them asking some pushy questions, I suppose. Jerry was going to the NFL league meetings in Atlanta, and that was where he was, I guess, in the midst of this. But he also went on to...
He was about to leave on his airplane.
Yeah, so he was getting ready to go do that, but at first he was doing this phone call. So I guess they're asking him questions, and at some point he says, you're not going to figure out what the team is doing right or wrong. If you or any 5 or 10 like you need to come to this meeting I'm going to today, the 32 teams here. You're geniuses, okay? Y'all really think you're going to sit here with a microphone and tell me all of the things that I've done wrong and without going over the rights? And then he got into defense of the roster, you know, and it went on and on and on, I suppose. I mean, you guys have read this, you know, and I could keep reading quotes because there's like 5 more that are paragraph sized. But Jerry having a little bit of a meltdown on the radio, threatening jobs. They are very tied in with the Cowboys. But what do y'all think about this latest outburst, I guess, if you will?
It's not a great look for him, and he's been – all right, look, he doesn't – most of his things are not great looks, right? So he's just getting pummeled all over the place for this, and rightfully so. Threatening people's jobs on the air is
stupid.
It's such spoiled billionaire bullcrap. That's what it is. And you know, the simplest part of the question is, and like if you asked him this, it would maybe shorten it, is why, like, instead of why didn't you sign a running back, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that, like getting into the specifics, he doesn't. It's like, why this strategy that you've had has been the same for the last 30 years. have you considered a pivot in the way that you build these things? Because other teams have gone to the Super Bowl multiple times since you have, and maybe it's time to kind of adjust that. That's the question that maybe needs to be pointed more directly, as opposed to what the other thing that happens is people will, oh, should have gotten a running back. Why didn't you make a trade? Why didn't you do this? And it's more of a macro thing than a micro thing. I think that's the thing they need to ask, and maybe he would answer that better. But still, it's stupid that he did this and ridiculous, and shows you the state of where they are right now. That what does he even care? Like, Sean and RJ asked some tough questions. Dude, you haven't been to the Super Bowl in 30 years.
First of all, those guys do a great job. We do know them. At the same time, Jerry pulling the bully, I'm bigger than you comment was emotional. I get it. He's getting hammered from every decision, every different direction. But he looked like an idiot by saying, well, if you don't stop asking me tough questions, which is basically, I'll get you guys fired. No, he's not. I know the Cowboys are entrenched into that 105.3 fan. They're not losing the Cowboys over a few questions. He's answered a lot more difficult questions over the years from even them or others. But I just thought what he did, well, I'll just buy you all that. That's stupid. Stupid, in my opinion, and he looked foolish to me.
Yeah, and so he got very defensive, and it's gone, nationwide as far as the news cycle, because it's Jerry and it's the Cowboys, so anything they do, but especially something like this where it's a bad look on him and he's bullying people and threatening jobs, it's going to go well out there into the public realm and the conversation across all sports stations and whatnot. So with whether you wanted that extra attention or not, you're getting it. And another thing he was asked about, and I can see from his point of view where the coaching question gets very overdone. I think he just answered this on Sunday, did he not? About I'm not making any changes right now. I thought he did at least.
He did.
But then he's getting asked about it.
They were stupid to ask the question.
And then he gets asked about it again, and so it's he made it clear he is not making a coaching change. He is not going to fire Mike McCarthy right now. So that was just, again, re-put out there, because I felt like it already was this weekend, but he hammered that home as well.
But if he's going to be as accessible as anybody combined in all professional sports, which means nobody else does this, after the games they have the middle scrum. Judy Batista today, Jerry Jones, when he got to Atlanta, to reporters, I'll pass, or do you want me to chew your ass out? And then he laughed and gave a thumbs up. He is accessible. He puts himself out in front of that, and then he's going to get asked those questions. You don't want to have to ask those questions. Don't be as accessible, or the media should just not listen to him. But that would be stupid, because he's gold. He's gold with the answers in the videos.
There's a very, I got this since when I read, was that Cooperstein the other day that said?
Yes, it was Chuck Cooperstein.
When I read that, man, it just clicked in my head of the mutual relationship. And I do think the Dallas media, and I'm not blaming Sean or RJ in this instance at all, but I think in general, they play into Jerry as much as anything else, because it's great material, right? And it's Jerry, and so it gets a big reaction. But I do feel like you have to pay attention to him. He's the owner. He puts himself out there unlike any other owner. But, man, if they just could find a way to not give him that attention that he so desperately craves, then maybe it could turn into something more useful for the Cowboys as an organization, rather than having been the mouthpiece all the time. But I know you can't do that, because it's Jerry. He's going to open his mouth and say something stupid, and that's going to get way more attention than some practice squad wide receiver that they signed.
Was he like a good coach after a bad loss, deflecting everything, because now everyone's talking about him, although it's talking about him because they got their ass kicked on Sunday?
It'd be nice to think he's that calculated. I don't think he's thinking it that way, though. And I do think that much of what the point was of Chuck Cooperstein was not so much blaming Dallas media, even though they are at fault for feeding into it as much as they do. They crave it, man. They go run into Jerry, baby. And it's the same 10 people in every shot, but they go run into Jerry. But at the same time,
and
he's the one that it's the one. Yeah, they have to. And at the same time, he's the one that puts himself out there, whereas every other owner basically in sports is not putting themselves out there in front of the reporters right after an embarrassing loss, so that you have to be asked about the status of your head coach. And what are you expecting to be asked when you go and meet with reporters right after you just got blown out by Detroit? It's just
but he's not going to have anything to do with RJ, Sean, or Bobby Belt's job. He's not. That's an act that's him going over the top, being old Jerry. But, okay, all right.
Yep, so there's Jerry Jones getting into a fight on local radio, and that wasn't a very good look for him. But around the rest of the NFL, there were some very interesting news and notes today. For example, Amari Cooper is now a Buffalo Bill. He was traded today by the Cleveland Browns to Buffalo, as Josh Allen has been in search of a true number one guy, with Stephon Diggs now a member of the Houston Texans. And to complete this deal, the Bills get Amari Cooper along with a 2025 sixth-round draft pick in exchange for a 2025 third-round pick and a seventh-round selection in 2026. Amari Cooper, now 30 years old. And this is very interesting, the timing just with Deshaun Watson and Cleveland and all of that. It looked like the writing was kind of on the wall that something's going to have to give for the Browns and for that franchise, but also for the Bills. They needed to kind of make a move here, so Amari Cooper's a Buffalo Bill.
I love it. Good for the Bills. I wish they had gotten Davante Adams just because I didn't want to see Aaron Rodgers get what he wanted. I guess maybe I'm just that petty.
Sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter to me. But because the Jets might be better on offense, and this stuff might all work out for them, but they still have dysfunctional tendencies towards them. So, but no, I love it for Amari Cooper. They're not going to bench Deshaun Watson. So, yeah, might as well go play with a quarterback who's 100 miles better. It's better for Keon Coleman. It's better for Curtis Samuel. It's better for Dalton Kincaid. It's going to open the offense up a lot for James Cook, for Ray Davis, all that. So, good for the Bills.
I've noticed something mentioned a couple times on Twitter. Diddy Watson is what some people are calling him now, as Diddy Watson. But, hey, he got his big guaranteed contract, and now he has no motivation. Imagine that. You give a guy like $250 million after he probably did some things, maybe did some things that should have sent him to jail. Total creep, and now he's not playing his best ball for you. Woe are the Cleveland Browns, and that's too bad. All right, Paul basically mentioned it, but Davante Adams is now a member of the New York Jets. The other big move made today as he reunites with former Packers teammate Aaron Rodgers there in Gotham, and they get that done. Raiders and Davante Adams, not much to write home about as far as that partnership, but the Raiders do get a 2025 conditional third-round draft pick in the trade that could bump up to a second-round selection if things fall the right way, such as Adams becomes a first or second team All-Pro this year, or he's playing in the AFC Championship game or Super Bowl as an active member of the roster. In those scenarios, the Raiders would get a second-round conditional pick, but instead they just get a 2025 conditional third for right now. So Davante Adams back with Aaron Rodgers, and the Jets, coming off that loss last night to the Bills, can certainly use another guy to try and turn things in the right direction for Aaron Rodgers and that franchise.
Yeah, I do like that offense, like the wide receiver room. I think Mike Williams will probably get pushed to the side there. But
yeah, you got to catch the football.
Yeah, especially after last night. But if you've got Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams, Allen Lazard, and Breece Hall in that offense, Aaron Rodgers is now out of excuses. You know, the offensive line still needs to be better, but you've seen what they can do. So they're good enough. They're better than most. And so, yeah, if he can't win with all this, then it's on him. It's totally on him.
No, yeah.
They've got one of the best defenses in the league. He's got the wide receivers he wants now. Two of them are his best friends in Adams and Lazard from Green Bay. He's gotten every single thing he's wanted and asked of the Jets. The coaches have changed, you know, even though he says that he has nothing to do with that. Everything is now on Aaron. So,
well, the pick he threw to end the game was not on him. The receiver slipped and fell, which led to an easy interception. So, but he's got to take a lot of the accountability too. They put a lot of money and a lot of investment into him.
So a couple of big wide receiver moves today in the NFL with those two deals going through for Amari Cooper and also Davante Adams. Tonight in baseball, ALCS Game 2, Guardians at the Yankees, 6:38 first pitch on TBS, True TV, and also Max. And the Yankees took game number 1, so back at home with a 1-0 lead and it'll be Tanner Bybee for the Guardians versus Garrett Cole. And then tomorrow we'll see the resumption of the NLCS, which the Dodgers and Mets are tied at 1 apiece. But tonight it's all on the AL. Yankees looking to go up 2-0, and there's a few things off the radar.
Yankees look really good. That's a great bounce back for the Mets after getting smoked in Game 1. Ought to be fun, but you could have an all-New York type of World Series coming up around the corner. All right, when we come back, Scott Mitchell, former Utah quarterback, played in the NFL, their radio color analyst on Cam Rising out for the year again. What does that mean in his opinion for Utah? What does it mean for Cam Rising? This is 365 Sports. Pioneer still in pipe. 1943, they opened up their doors. They have pipe and they have steel, they have metal. And what you need, the product that builds things, whether it's commercial or real estate, what you need from the nuts and bolts to the big stuff to make a house or a huge office building, they have it. And, of course, their location east of I-35 on Loop 340 and Highway 6. Bigger, better, faster and stronger. Moved into that back in December of 2022, and they are rolling. And they were just fine where they were, but they needed more space. They needed what was already an efficient type of loading dock setup, and now they have even more bays for 18-wheelers and haulers and pickup trucks and more. Pioneer still in pipe since 1943, pioneerboys.com.
When it comes to me and my money, I know the way it should be. I need a partner I can count on. That's Genco and me. Genco is my credit union. They're always there for me. They're people I trust. They treat me like family. My money, my future, my credit union. Genco.
Automatic Chef is your local vending, office coffee, and micro market provider, delivering outstanding service to break rooms all over Central Texas for over 50 years. Automatic Chef brings the best products to your location at the best prices. With hundreds of choices in fresh food, coffee, snacks, and drinks, let Automatic Chef tailor a break room solution to your needs. Make break time great again with Automatic Chef. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchef.com.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or two or three reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
Helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem like you've got a flight that's being canceled and you don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com. Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
We're now joined by Utah radio color analyst, former Utah Utes great, NFL quarterback, and a friend of the show, and Scott Mitchell with Craig and Paul, David Smoak, 365 Sports. Great to see you, my man.
Yes, always a pleasure. Thank you.
You too. Am I wrong to feel like Cam Rising has had some great moments, but it almost looks like an old fighter who won't retire? And God bless him. He's courageous and all that, but is this, do you think, the end of him at Utah in his college career?
Oh man, that's a tough question. But Friday night watching him play was painful. And what's so hard is you've seen so many great games from Cam. I mean, 2 conference championships, 2 Rose Bowls. When Cam came in and started playing for Utah, it changed the whole program. I mean, I swear, single-handedly just changed the whole dynamic, the whole belief, the whole thing just changed when he started playing. And at the beginning of this season, I think everybody was very optimistic. The first game and a half before he got injured in the Baylor game, he looked great. And this team's got a lot of talent on both sides of the football. So I think everybody was really optimistic. And for me, watching him in the game, I was like, okay, am I seeing rust or am I seeing an inability to actually play? And as the game went on, it became clear, very clear. The game didn't go on very long before it became very clear that he just was inept. He just couldn't play. And it was a sad thing to see, because Utah fans are very hopeful about a shot to win the conference, to go to the college football playoffs. And a lot of it hinged on Cam Rising playing well and being healthy.
So Isaac Wilson is the guy now, Scott, and he'll get the first team reps, which he's gotten already at points during the season. How much better do you think that will make him in the short term, that now he's not looking over his shoulder anymore?
Well, I think that the decision and knowing that I'm the guy now, I think helps everyone. I think it helps Isaac. I think it helps all the guys around him, the coaches. There's no hope. There's no expectation that Cam Rising's going to come back. You're not a placeholder. You're not here just until the regular guy gets here. And I think that kind of changes things a little bit for Isaac, in that, okay, it's my shot here. And Isaac's played fairly well this year. They've had some challenges in the red zone, and he's made some freshman mistakes, but man, he's shown a lot of promise. And I think, now getting to kind of go back in the game, he got to sit down for a week or so and kind of look and assess and see where he was. I think he'll be more confident. I also think the players around Isaac will actually kind of come to his aid, so to speak. Not everyone knows it's Isaac Wilson moving forward, and I just think it really helps Isaac. I think it helps the whole team. I think people were getting so much fatigue from, is Cam coming back? When's he coming back? I mean, he's now out this year, and everybody's still talking about he could come back for an 8th year of college football, and it's like, enough already. And so I think people are ready to kind of move forward, and I think it's a good break and a good fresh start for the program.
Now, I know the Cam story kind of overtook not only the last couple of days, but certainly that Arizona State game as well, as we're all watching him, like you said, just out there struggling the way that he did. Obviously, Cam Scatterbo was really good. I mean, surprise there, but just kind of what were your thoughts in general on that Arizona State loss, and what from that does transfer moving forward, Rising notwithstanding?
It was a game of big plays in the run game for Arizona State, and Cam Scatterbo, I watched him a year ago, but this dude is tough. He's just relentless, and he's so good. He has great feet, and he's got such awareness at the line of scrimmage, finding the holes, and he really exploited the Utah defense when they kind of made some mistakes in their gap protection, and Utah's normally really good against the runs. Held him to 31 yards in Salt Lake last year, but boy, he was just so impressive to me. And you got Kenny Dillingham. He's a guy that's he's an alumni, and I think that matters. You think of Jonathan Smith when he was at Oregon State, and everyone said Oregon State's an automatic win on your schedule, and all of a sudden he was able to bring guys in. The NIL, the transfer portal, really can turn a program around in a quick hurry here. So they were fired up, and that's what Utah's seen this year. everybody gives you their best shot, right? You're going to get, because everyone, it's kind of like, well, Utah was the team to win the conference, and so you're seeing everyone's best shot, and Kenny Dillingham wants to make a statement. His program wants to make a statement. So I'm not surprised by the effort from what happened. And there's not a lot. Well, there is a lot. There was Mekhi Bernard played great. The offensive line actually blocked very well in both the pass and the run. You've got a secondary that's playing pretty good. They got a lot of young, really athletic players, and they've had some pretty significant injuries on the defense. Hopefully you get some of those guys back, but there's still a lot of depth on this team, a lot of talent on this team. And the reality is Utah's been in this situation before. The first Pac-12 championship that Utah went to, they went 0-2 at the beginning of conference play. The Big 12 now is really a crazy conference. I love it. I love that so many people are still in it. They believe they can win, and that just makes it super, super competitive. And you have to play it all the way through to the end. You don't know what crazy things can happen. I don't know all the tiebreakers that happen at the end of the year, but I'm sure we're going to get some mathematician from MIT to explain, okay, here's this team is in and this team is out, and it's because of, this I'm not even going to pronounce it, but just some math equation. And so I love it. And that's what I've loved about the Big 12 so far this year, is that people care about football and they want to watch it, and they're invested in it.
Scott, back in 2014, the Big 12 at their media days announced one true champion. In other words, one team will win it all. And that was the year that TCU and Baylor ended up like in the top 5, and then they couldn't separate who should be in the 4-team playoff. Ohio State slipped in and then won the whole national title. So don't count on a tiebreaker, even though they have like 10 or 12 of them there. They'll screw that up in some particular way. But I love what you said. Now, Utah fans, how are they taking this? Because they were very vocal about running the Big 12. A lot of fan bases do that. But Utah initially, as you know, the fan base kind of looked down at joining the Big 12.
Yeah, look, the Utah fan base is struggling right now. It's painful, and this is super painful. And just because Cam Rising, it's almost like you put all your eggs into Cam Rising, and rightfully so, and based off past performance. So there was a lot of expectation, and I think there's a lot of excitement too about the expanded college football playoffs. There was this perception that you're going to be in every game. You're going to have a chance to win every game. You're not going up against USC, and you're not going up against Oregon and Washington. You're going up against teams that are fairly similar in their talent levels and their abilities and the type of teams they are. And so I think everyone feels that way, though, in the Big 12, and I certainly know Utah did. I'm going to be honest with you, okay? Or let's just say candid. I'm always honest, but I'm going to be candid with you. I think the thing that's hardest for Utah fans right now is that BYU is doing so well. It's like one thing to like, okay, we're struggling, but your little brother down south is like really doing well, and everybody's talking about him, and nobody's talking about you, and that makes it 1,000 times worse than it probably is.
That's a great point.
But is it strange to you that Utah fans were so adamant about being a Pac-12 team, seeing as they weren't in that conference all that long?
Well, I think what was hard about the Pac-12 is that Utah had worked its way up through the conference. Mm-hmm. They'd had some lean years. I mean, Kyle Whittingham, there was a lot of discussion. Is he the right coach for this, and should he be fired? And it was tough there for 3 or 4 years, kind of early on, and so Utah kind of hit its stride in the conference. And I think they've been to 4 of the last 5 Pac-12 championship games. I mean, it's been to 2 Rose Bowls, and you feel like, okay, we've really hit something here. There was so much tradition in the Pac-12. It was a great conference to be a part of, and you kind of feel like, okay, we finally arrived. I mean, really, in the beginning of Utah's existence in the Pac-12, it was like, we're just honored and privileged that we get to play USC. And we're honored, it wasn't like, okay, you're a part of us. It's like you're here because this just has to be this way, and we'll reluctantly take you. That's kind of the sense that you got from people. And so to finally feel like, okay, we've gotten here, and then to have the conference just kind of disintegrate was a tough blow. I've said all along, it's like, there's going to be conference realignment, and if you're not relevant in the Big 12, you're going to have a hard time being relevant in college football moving forward. So there was a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation on Utah when it went to the Big 12, and whether they rub people wrong or I don't think Utah fans are like, oh, it's terrible to be in the Big 12. I think a lot of them are like, we're glad we're somewhere that's a good football conference, and it's really about what you do moving forward. That's really the most important thing, at least to me.
Scott, Coach Whittingham has made it clear that he won't be doing this much longer. He's had a fabulous career. It's not been an easy year. No one grinds more than he does. And you mentioned Utah had 0-2 start and won the Pac-12 the first time. How, in your opinion, is he taking this as even more of something of a challenge, or what?
I know it's super hard on him, and it's so hard because, he's damned if he does and he damned if he doesn't. Should we play the young guy? Should we wait for our older guy who's really been a great part? So I know the whole issue with Cam's injuries has just been a grind on everyone. And Coach Whittingham is a tough-minded individual, and he's been that way in the program. And he's always been a coach that's like I love to be the underdog. I love that you count us out. I think he's more comfortable in that situation than kind of being the one that everyone thinks should win the conference. And so he's not uncomfortable in this situation right now. And he's been so good about it in the past when they've had these challenges, both on and off the field. A couple of players tragically passed away a couple of years ago, and they've done just a tremendous job of turning that into such a great positive. And the program struggled, but it's found its way through those tough times. And I think people, if they're really smart, would look at what Kyle Whittingham has done at Utah, because it's brilliant, and he gets more out of less than I think any coach in the country. He's great at culture, and he's great at people buying into the program, and he's great at developing players. And he has a staff that, has been intact for quite some time, and they understand where he is. So I don't think this is, a place where he goes, I'm not comfortable with this, or I'm not disappointed, because I'm telling you, there's not a tougher individual in the world than Kyle Whittingham. In fact, if I was going into a fight, he'd be the first person that I'd want with me, because he would just not give up, and he would not back down. And that's just who he is. Now, I wouldn't be surprised to see him that this is his last year. It would not surprise me at all. He's very clear. He's been very adamant about, he's not going to do this forever. I know more than anything, he really wanted to get to the college football playoffs and see what happened there. And I really he felt this was the year to do it. Whether he thinks the team has the potential of a year from now, I don't know. But I know that's something that was really important to him before he retired.
You had a chance coming out of college when you entered the NFL with Miami first, and then, of course, Detroit, then Baltimore, Cincinnati, to kind of sit and watch the game. A lot of times there were still quarterbacks that played right away, and some even before you. How much does that help, in your opinion, to just marinate on the sideline? We've seen C.J. Stroud jump right into it, and others too. What are your thoughts about that now in pro football?
Oh, man, the game's certainly different, and it's certainly a lot easier for quarterbacks to do well. And part of it, I think, is how well they're trained technically, and just their understanding of the game. And a lot of what's happening in pro football is very similar to a lot of what these guys are seeing in college football. I can't hit quarterbacks anymore. It's a little bit different deal. And to see some of these players do well. I mean, I was always impressed with C.J. Stroud. Utah played Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, and I was watching throw. I go, that's an NFL throw right there. That's an NFL throw right there. Of course, he had NFL receivers he was throwing to, but it was just super impressive. Now, from my from my experience, you tell me. I sat between Don Shula and Dan Marino for 4 years in every single meeting every day. And let me tell you, it was an unbelievable experience. And then to go to practice and then to watch how both of them handled games and game situations. I mean, it was a master class in understanding and learning how to play the quarterback position. And when I came in to finally play, I played very well. And it was because of all of that experience and knowledge that I got. And I think it was invaluable. I don't know if you all remember Jeff George, who was the number one pick.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And so we were the same draft, and I interviewed Jeff a few years ago, and I just said, I was so envious of you because you were like the first pick in the draft, and I went in the 4th round. And he goes, I was so envious of you. He says, I didn't have anybody around to really tell me and help me and guide me. And here you were there with Marino and Shula. He says the only guy that helped me was Eric Dickerson, and he didn't teach me how to throw the ball, but he was a great teammate and really supportive. And he said, I would have given anything to have had that support. And so much of your success in the NFL really is landing in the right situation for your abilities and even the timing of where you are from a maturity standpoint. You see Sam Darnold having success in Minnesota now, and he was seeing ghosts when he was with the Jets in New York. And a lot of it is growing up. I mean, you're not very old when you get in the NFL, or a lot of these guys, they get on really good teams. I know for Marino, he's like, well, one of the greatest blessings in my life was being drafted late in the 1st round because I was on a great team. So I think a lot of guys can play in the NFL. It's just hitting the right place at the right time.
I'm curious about this. There was the penalty last night. I've heard it a couple times, but since we had you on today, there was a roughing the passer on Aaron Rodgers, which was using the body weight, tackling the quarterback. Right. And I thought there are now eras of quarterbacks that heard that and been like, "Are you kidding me? That's a penalty." I got hit like. You probably get hit by Gilbert Brown and guys like that. Like, I wish the body weight penalty was something then.
Look, if I had Gilbert Brown land on top of me, I would be here right now. That was the biggest man I've ever seen in my life. And if I couldn't get away from him, then I need to retire.
He was about 350, wasn't he? Or that's what they listed him at?
Look, if a guy's 350, everybody's lying, okay? The guy's over 400 pounds. And in fact, we played Green Bay in Detroit, and he actually came through the backfield and tripped and fell, and he hit the ground, and he just bounced off the ground. And I swear the Silverdome just shook when that happened. It was just like, but look, I knew, and I have playbooks, and I have playbooks from that were shown to me from people like Tony Dungy, who was the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. And the top priority for a defense is to take out the other team's quarterback. I mean, that's how it was. You knew going into games that you had to protect yourself. And you don't think about it. You don't sit there because you can't play if that's the case. And so you really just you just have to have eyes in the back of your head and really be careful in those situations. Because look, the body slam thing will do numbers on your shoulders, and a lot of shoulder separations happen from those plays. A lot of guys will just, if they get close to you and you throw the ball, they magically fall on the ground and they roll into your legs. I mean, there's all kinds of things that guys used to do, and everyone in the NFL knew it, knows it, and it was just kind of the way it was then. But they've realized that, Utah right now is going through what the NFL does not want to have happen. They don't want the star quarterbacks out of games. It kills the ratings. Nobody wants to see it. Aaron Rodgers with the New York Jets is so much better than anyone else they put in there. So they want to make sure that guy's in there. He's ratings, he's interesting, and he makes people want to watch. The reality for me, that's what I want to watch. I want to watch great quarterback play in the NFL. So I don't want these guys to get hurt, and I want to see them play, and because there's so many really good players in the NFL today. It's great to watch.
Scott, great stuff, man. Glad we got you on. Good luck with Wilson as he moves on, Utah as they move on to try to right the ship, and good luck to Cam Rising too. Thanks for your knowledge and insight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do it anytime.
And Scott Mitchell, voice, color analyst at Utah Radio, played in the NFL, Remember, big, tall lefty, played with the Dolphins, as he mentioned, and got a chance to sit around with Dan Marino, and then was pretty good. Had a nice run with Detroit as well in the early to mid-1990s, and now a former Utah great, too. When we come back, John McClain, his thoughts about the Jerry fever that's gone viral, his interview, and some of you have asked about it in the chat room, and then also a little bit about the NFL after now, week number 6? This is 365 Sports. Waco Custom Marketplace, your hometown grocery store at 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco. And they have specials going on this week, as they always do. And they're also a great place if you have what you need to get some product for tailgating. Waco Custom Marketplace, the specials going on this week. They have boneless pork butt and bone-in pork butt at $2.25 and $2.15 a pound. Top sirloin steak at $8.75 a pound. Ground tallow at 99 cents a pound. Bacon ends and pieces, which can be a great dish if you cook it right, with brown sugar and a lot more. That's available. But if you need charcoal or pellet fuel for your tailgating, if you need produce, for example, chicken, sausage or pork, beef, and even seafood, they have that too. If you want cold beer and wine, they have that too. Marinades and seasonings for your brisket or tri-tip and more. Waco Custom Marketplace, the Bauer family, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Hi, I'm Dana Hassel, President and CEO of American Bank. Waco is a great place for business, and for more than 70 years, American Bank has been the bank for business. We continue to invest in our growing community with state-of-the-art branches conveniently located to serve you within minutes. Our experienced bankers, lenders, and decision makers work directly with business owners like you every day, providing tailored solutions, timely answers, and local insights face-to-face. Schedule a meeting with one of our bankers today and find out what makes American Bank the bank for your business. Member FDIC.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
He is to humanity what bacon is to breakfast. He is allowed to use his cell phone on an airplane. He is Cesar Leal of Leal's Mexican Restaurant.
I don't always eat Mexican food, but when I do, I prefer Leal's.
Leal's Mexican Restaurant, 9000 Panther Drive in Woodway, 254-772-8140.
This is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back. John McClain, Hall of Fame NFL columnist, with us here on 365 Sports. John, it's been kind of an eventful day. even for a Tuesday during the season with Amari Cooper, Devontae Adams getting traded, Jerry Jones going off on a tirade. We'll start with, because I'll wait for Smokey to get out of the bathroom to talk about Jerry Jones, but your thoughts on which trade do you think will work out better, Amari Cooper to the Bills or Devontae Adams to the Jets?
I believe Amari Cooper, he had been playing really bad in Cleveland, dropping touchdown passes. It was obvious his heart wasn't in it. Deshaun Watson's the worst now, Will Levis is the worst quarterback in the NFL. Watson's number 2. And they took away his best receiver. I believe that they're going to keep playing him because they want to keep losing so they get a high draft choice to draft his replacement in April. And as far as Devontae Adams, most of these wide receiver trades in which they go and get big new contracts, they don't work out. Kansas City won a Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill. And what did the Raiders do after giving up first and second round picks for Adams? They get rid of his quarterback that he came there to play with. I don't see them. I know Aaron Rodgers, if people don't believe he had something to do with Saleh being fired, they're nuts. As soon as Saleh wanted to demote his best buddy, offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett from play caller, then he gets fired the next day. And then they acquired Devontae Adams, the receiver he wanted. If Hassan Reddick, who's been holding out all this time, if he was buddies with Rodgers, they would have made that deal work. I have never seen, Paul, in my 48 years covering the NFL, I have never seen a player have as much control over a roster as Rodgers does. That's why they are a dumpster fire bound to fail, and I love it. As far as the Bills, I'm guessing they probably figure, we probably should have kept Stephon Diggs. We had him under contract for another 3 years because he's been playing really well for the Texans.
John, the Texans 41, Patriots 21 out in Foxborough. C.J. Stroud with a trio of touchdown passes. We also got to see Drake May make his first start. What were your impressions on another win for Houston, now 5-1, and also, I guess, what you saw from Drake May and the Patriots?
Well, the Texans' first 4 victories, Craig, had been by 2, 6, 4, and 3 points. Last year, they won 7 of their 10 games by 7 or fewer points. So it was nice to see them have one that we thought, even though it was 14-7 at the halftime, I never thought they were going to lose that game. The Patriots are just terrible. I was so impressed with Drake May. They beat him up early. He was 3 and out. They were turning it over, forced 4 turnovers. He was sacked 4 times, 3 by Will Anderson Jr. They knocked him down another 8 times, pressured him constantly, and he still threw 3 touchdown passes, I believe, for 46, 38, and 30 yards. And he was that old taking a licking, keep on ticking. I was so impressed, and so were the Texans. Now the Texans go to Green Bay. Jordan Love has thrown 4 touchdown passes in back-to-back games. He has totally recovered from that early season injury. And the Texans, even though it was the first time they scored 40 in regular season since 2021, they still have not played offensively the kind of game they're capable of. But the good thing is they ran the ball 192 yards. Joe Mixon has played 2 full games. He's got 159 and 102 yards rushing, and he's a good receiver too. So having him back, Dameon Pierce had a 54-yard run, Mixon a 59-yard run, should make a world of difference because they're going to the Packers, who are second in the league in rushing. And I'm writing a column for HoustonTexans.com about 2 teams that didn't want their back, Cincinnati with Joe Mixon and the Raiders with Josh Jacobs. Both of those guys are doing great for their new teams, the Packers and the Texans.
John, as you know, Jerry Jones today was on the flagship in Dallas and got a little frustrated, got a little angry, got a little upset because they were asking him tough questions, legitimate questions, and in a way almost tried to bully them about being able to ask somebody else to ask the questions in the future. It's not a good look, in my opinion. He's at the NFL owners' meetings. He brought that up again. Your thoughts about, is he on a breaking point right now?
Sure sounds like it. He definitely bullied them, and he threatened them. Basically threatened to get them fired. The GM up there, Gavin Spittle, was my GM here in Houston, and Gavin was really good. What Jerry Jones did for them this morning, you couldn't pay for. They're getting publicity on every talk show, nationally, locally, all over the country. You can't buy that kind of pub. And the one that's unhappy about it is the ticket, because the ticket is the perennial ratings leader up there. I thought it was a bad look by Jerry. Turned 82 Sunday. His team's terrible. Everybody told him throughout the offseason, you need a running back. Derrick Henry, living in Dallas, wanted to play for the Cowboys. They never gave his agent the courtesy of a call. Now he's on a pace for almost 2,000 yards. All these things are being thrown up in Jerry's face, and they're legitimate. Dak is not Dak. So far, you got Dak, playoff Dak, not regular season Dak. But be that as it may, the division's not great, and they could still get their defensive players back. And if you got regular season Dak, even though there's no running game, they still can compete for a wild card. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people in Houston eating it up, and they play at AT&T Stadium against the Cowboys this year, and that's going to be fun. But I'll tell you something Randy Galloway told me one time, and he's talking about as a writer, a columnist, and as a talk show host. He said, I have ripped that man every way I can possibly think to rip him, and every time I see him, he acts like I'm his long-lost brother. How can you not like somebody like that? Jerry has never, ever acted the way he acted this morning since he bought that team in 1989. I don't know what it's a sign of, but 82 years old, I've always thought he should be not putting himself out there as much. I'll bet you he comes back and apologizes.
John, the interesting thing is fans, want Jerry to change. The problem is I don't know too many 82-year-old men who all of a sudden have life-affirming changes in the way that they do their business. So that's not going to happen. I mean, there are a lot of antiquated things that he does. I think they're terrified of the salary cap in a way that no other team has. And I think what fans want to see, like when he said he was all in, is, look, they're building for this future in this terrified, like, we're going to be in salary cap jail. Okay, that's fine. Everybody be fine if they were in salary cap jail every few years, if they won a Super Bowl like, say, the Rams did. But he's trying to build another dynasty, and without a Tom Brady or a Patrick Mahomes, that just doesn't happen, right?
Well, also, you can redo contracts. How's Baltimore a Super Bowl contender every year when they're paying Lamar Jackson that kind of money? Because they got a really good personnel department and a great coaching staff. It can be done. The only time Jerry's going to change is when he has to, because mentally or physically. But then Steven's going to run it exactly like Jerry did, unless Steven has a change of heart and said, okay, I'm going to pull back and we're going to go hire a legitimate GM. Whether that's Will McClain, who's looked at as a great personnel man, or they bring somebody in, because if Steven says, I'm going to run it like Daddy, then that's going to be depressing for Cowboy fans a long time, and that 30-year streak might stretch to 60.
John, where does Atlanta rank amongst your favorite Super Bowl cities? They got awarded another one today for 2028. I know that's not the biggest story in the world, but you've been all around various sites. Where does ATL stack up?
They've got a great stadium. When they had their first two, the weather was horrible. And the only reason they got another one is because they built a new stadium. But then they put on such a good show with that new stadium, they got another one. But as far as they do, every city does everything they can. And a lot of people like to go to New Orleans so they can stay drunk all week, not have to drive and worry about getting beat up your eyes. But I always liked it when it was on the West Coast, San Diego one year, especially Palo Alto one year. That was an incredible experience. I loved it. In L.A. as well, Miami, Tampa. But Atlanta, they do a great job of hosting the Super Bowl, but to me it's nothing special like the ones I just mentioned.
The only thing I felt about Miami when they were there, John, and this is just from our perspective of being, kind of locked in Radio Row for a week, was the staff there didn't seem to care that we were there. Like everything else was fine, but as far as like us, it was like, hey, you're out of bottled water. And they're like, oh, are we? Like, okay.
Well, that's because they were warned ahead of time that Paul Catalina was coming.
Yeah, probably. I'm a diva, John.
Well, another Super Bowl for
Beware.
Atlanta and not one for Arlington.
That is amazing, considering Jerry's influence and the fact they got the biggest stadium. And yes, they had an ice storm. I think that the scandal they had afterward played a big part of that. All the problems they had in game would played a big part of that too. I am stunned that Jerry Jones, with all his power, has not been able to get one back there. Just shocked.
You know, John, that was something that they were, as they love to do, break a record. And I remember that. They had the scaffolding problem, or whatever it was. The weather, Mother Nature, that's going to happen. Atlanta, Paul, weren't you guys in the so-called the hood?
We definitely were. We definitely were. And that was but next time I know not to make that mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a dire situation. We had a place in Bankhead that was going to be nice, and then
Buckhead.
No, Buckhead. No, we had Bankhead. That's where we want to go.
We had the wrong one.
We had a place in
Rob a Bankhead.
We had a place in Buckhead that was really nice, and then the week, like 3 days before we were about to leave, the lady said, "There's a gas leak. I have to cancel." And I'm like, "Okay." In this whole building, what I think happened was she read on the internet that the Super Bowl was here and didn't know it, and said, "Oh, I'm giving this place away too cheap."
Yep.
So we had to book a place at the last minute, and our owner was like, well, it has to be the same budget. So I found a place. The house looked nice, and the house was incredibly nice. The surrounding area was not.
It was a renovation. It was one of those.
The first one in that neighborhood, that's for damn sure. Yeah.
And maybe even bullet holes in the screens or whatever. And then I stayed because of my great friend Eric. He had rooms in the Omni in downtown Atlanta, and Craig and Q and Paul and others were in the hood. They thank God you guys survived, right?
Well, that's because you're the boss.
Look, because that guy was
You should be staying in the top 5.
Jamal Lewis came on the show with Craig and Q, and they told him where they were staying. He's like, I don't even stay there. Like, that's where I'm from.
Oh my gosh,
that's great.
John, anything outside of what we've discussed NFL-wise that we've missed that may be top of mind around the league?
I can't wait for Baylor basketball season. I was with a bunch of Baylor alums last night for the DePelchins Children's Center, and James Francis was inducted into the Gridiron Legends of Texas, along with Eric Dickerson and John Randall and Tony Franklin and 2 other high school people, and we were all fired up about basketball and seeing Edgecombe and the Duke point guard, and we can't wait.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people, Baylor fans and alums, agree with you 100%. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
So tough in the Big 12. Guys, thank you very much. Sick 'em Bears. Good luck against the Red Raiders.
Every Tuesday around 5:30, most every Tuesday, unless there's NFL meetings or business that he has to take care of, John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, who is in the room every year when they discuss who should be not just on the ballot, but eventually all the way down to who gets in to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. When we come back, and thanks again to Garrett Ross, Jack McKenzie, Emery Winter. Emery's dialing up 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the CW. And thank you as well, but more with Paul and his top 5. That is next.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Welcome into the Top 5 here on 365 Sports, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Use our promo code 365 Sports whenever you go to bidonbeef.com and get in one of those auctions. Today, I'm going through the Heisman watch. Things have changed a little bit over the weekend because we saw some injuries suffered. For example, had LSU lost to Ole Miss because of Trey Harris, I was going to put Trey Harris in this, but Trey Harris got hurt in the game, and I don't know where he stands. Plus, there's some other injuries we've got to talk about down the line, and a couple other people we needed to at least talk about in the short term. Number 5, Cam Ward at Miami. Probably higher up in the list, but they were on bye this week, so Cam Ward got to do, nothing to change it. But this is someone we need to keep watch of if Miami keeps winning and also winning close games because of his comeback skills. He's going to be sitting in New York. As a matter of fact, right now, I would have to bet if it was today, he would be sitting in New York. But we've got to see them get a couple more big wins because they've not quite played the meat of their schedule yet, but that's coming. Number 4. Dillon Gabriel. How many big wins does this guy have to have in his career to get him to New York? This was a huge game against Ohio State. He was fantastic. He was clutch. He was everything the Ducks needed him to be. He had Heisman moments all night long, including this, the touchdown that put them on top for good there at Autzen Stadium. Dillon Gabriel, right now, I'm sending him to New York. If you're sending 3 or 4, I'm definitely probably sending Dillon Gabriel. And it's probably going to come down to him and Cam Ward in some way or another if they both don't go. Number 3, someone we need to start paying attention to and keep paying attention to, but for negative reasons, is Travis Hunter at Colorado. Now, I still think he's a deserving candidate, but he was injured in the game against Kansas State. And we don't know how long he's going to be out. And usually when guys miss time during a Heisman campaign, that hurts them overall. So even though it might be just 2 or 3 games, however long he's out is going to hurt the overall cause for Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy. Does that mean he's not Heisman caliber? No, he still is. He's still probably the best player in the country. But now he's dropping down a bit because we don't know how badly he's injured and how much time he's going to miss. 1 game, probably not a big deal. 2, 3 games, especially now that we're past the midway point of the season, probably not great news for his Heisman hopes at Colorado. His NFL draft hopes, however, continue to be top 3 or everyone is stupid. Do you think that's a fair assessment, Garrett? I think so. He's picked in the top 3 or you're stupid, NFL. Stupid. That's how good he is. Once-in-a-lifetime type player right there. Being coached by another once-in-a-lifetime type player. So let's not mess that up, NFL, please. Don't let Travis Hunter fall past 3. Don't be that dumb. Number 2, Ryan Williams at Alabama. Now, look, he was not as much of a factor. South Carolina did a good job of taking him out of the game, but he is averaging 57-plus yards per touchdown this year. If that keeps up, he stays in the discussion. Wide receivers are not going to have like monumentous games every week, but this 17-year-old super stud pretty much does. So Ryan Williams, well in the Heisman conversation, even though Alabama almost had the SEC's worst double play of losing to Vanderbilt and South Carolina, both teams that aren't bad this year, but are the perennial Southeastern Conference basement, and nobody wants to lose to either one of those teams any given year, much less back-to-back in the same year. Alabama, lucky to get out of there with a dub this week, but Ryan Williams, somebody we got to keep an eye on. And number 1, Ashton MF and Genty. This guy is sitting down at halftime with 200 yards every week. If they left him in the game, he might have already broken the rushing record. But they don't need to.
he is going to lead this team potentially to the playoff, and maybe even, given how the Big 12 or ACC could turn out, because those are chaotic conferences, he might even get them a first-round bye because they are just winning by so much. Now, do I think they're going to get a first-round bye? No. They're Boise State. They'll be disrespected for different reasons that don't really matter in the scheme of things. They're one of the best teams in the country. They've got the best player in the country. This dude should be winning the Heisman Trophy right now. He should win every trophy he's up for. Whatever it is, Ashton Jeanty should be winning it if you're voting right now. Now, granted, there's still a long time to go, but dear God, Ashton Jeanty, he's the best running back I've seen, probably since Ricky Williams. Am I crazy, Garrett?
I'd have to think on that, but that's pretty fair. It's fair.
I mean, like, there have been some great ones, don't get me wrong, but someone who's controlling games and racking up yards like this, Ron Dane, yeah, but this is something else. This is just something completely different. This is a five-tool player, as they would call it in baseball. Unbelievable what he is doing. That's going to do it for the top five. We're saying goodbye right now.
Well, that's it. That's it for us. Thanks to everybody who's been a part of the show. Thanks to Jack, Emery, Garrett, and Levi. He wasn't here today, but might as well thank him anyway. Don't forget about 365 Sports Tonight. Tomorrow we've got Dan Wetzel, Chuck Cooperstein, Taylor McCarg, Zach Gelb, and a cast of thousands joining the show. For Craig, for Smokey, I'm Paul Catalina. Good night, everybody.